NeonicVoid Productions presents.
Welcome back to Book Watchers, where the plots don't match and the show doesn't matter. There's so much more in the books. Anyway, I'm your host, Jacob.
I'm still trying to dissect
and the
what the fuck
and
you
the
just said.
and the very confused, buffering-looking dude
Buffering?
is
Sweet,
yeah.
I
You
ain't
can see
buffering?
sweetheart. I can see the little circle,
Oh,
the little
the
loading
little,
circle, like going around your forehead, just like.
I'm trying to comprehend what the hell you said. Hi, I'm Devin. Let's go with poppin'. Yeah. It's just like the first time I ever turned on a mic and a camera before. Welcome to Book Watchers. Yeah, I don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm going somewhere with this. I'm going somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
If you look in the description, you know the little description where you click on thingies, there's more info. You'll see a link tree that will take you all to the other bullshit that we have, other podcasts and wonderful things, YouTube channel, Twitters. Go follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or YouTube or TikTok. I do need to add the TikTok link to that link tree. I'll do that this week. I'll do that this week.
You'll do it eventually.
I do a lot. Okay. There's other podcasts on there. There's a Ookie Spooky Spookocalypse. There's Tea of the Gods that one day might come back. And then there's Voidonica, the D&D podcast, which it's going to happen.
Is currently on a slight hiatus. We've busy lives. Not really a hiatus. Not really a hiatus. Just more of like we keep pushing recording dates back.
Oh, sweetie, I haven't posted any of the episodes for game 2 yet.
Haven't? Oh.
I haven't posted anything to Voidonica in over a year. I have 30 plus episodes on the back burner because I wanted to make it a very ambitious project, and it turns out I can't do all that, which I'm just one person. So it'll come out soon.
It'll come out when it comes out.
It'll come out when it comes out. Next month, 2 months later, it'll come out, So look forward to that. But yeah,
coming soon to own for VHS.
Oh my god!
Remember that?
I hope to God Mike did not catch that.
It didn't, but I'm pretty sure I just triggered Johnny.
God, no.
Did I trigger him?
My boyfriend did the most unholiest of things. And I don't know if I should describe it on the pod.
Was it a burp or a fart?
It was a fart. An unholy fart.
Gross.
The devil's.
Gross. It's a good thing no one has ever invested in. I just want to say it's a good thing no one invested in technology that replicates aromas. I mean, yeah, there's aromatherapy, but like for entertainment purposes, like in movies and this.
Yeah, what would you have to do? Stick something up your nose? Like, no.
No, I mean it would just be kind of like one of those like what are they called? Like aerosolizer things. Like those like those wall mounts where you stick the can of Febreze in there and like every few minutes it'll just be something like that, but it will like replicate the smells of like like when you're watching an action movie, it'll replicate the smell of all the sweat, blood, and ass flying all over the place. See, that would be disgusting, and it's a good thing no one's invested in that.
I don't think I need that. I don't think I need that. No.
Hell, there are people that will faint at the sight of blood, and then there are people who will faint at the smell of it. So people with hemophobia would be dying in those kind of movies.
I feel like you're projecting. Is that something new that would happen with you?
Dude, I've grown up. Well, I've grown up with like I used to get nosebleeds all the time.
That's fair. That's fair.
So like hell, it's worse. It was worse when I was a kid. Like now, sometimes I still get them, and it's just like a little trickle or like a little drop that'll pop out, and I'm like, oh, okay. But as a kid, I had like rivers coming out of my fucking nose. So blood is not an issue for me.
Well, then quit
Now
sucking
seeing,
in all that air.
I need more. I need more than you. I need
How is
all
that?
of it.
You need all the air.
I need all the air. Anyway, but enough about me. Instead, let's talk about me and my accomplishments. I'm kidding.
What?
I'm
What
kidding.
accomplishments? What? A half a page?
You want to go there? You really want to go there?
I have more accomplishments. Is your name on a bloody, disgusting article for a movie? I don't think so.
It's on a video game.
What video game?
Even Falling by Razor Edge Games. It still hasn't been released, but my name will be on there.
You've been talking about that. You talked about that game like half a decade ago, and it still hasn't been released.
But hey, yeah, I know. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised it was canceled. But my name was on their website, and I was part of the development. I was a part of the developing team, and my name was also on an art gallery.
So was mine.
I know.
Not on that one. Not on that one, but like on others.
On others. Good for you.
Yeah, good for me.
Mm-hmm.
With imaginary hair that I have.
So anyway, moving on from the gay on gay hate crimes.
What are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to be talking about a book series that I wasn't 100% sure we were going to do, simply because I haven't read all of the books. But what we're going to end up doing is we're just going to be reading them in installments. If I was laying on my bed, you would see my feet just kind of like.
You're just going to give the foot people a thing to latch on to.
Hey, whatever gets us those views.
I mean, I guess.
Come on, we got to pump those numbers up, all right? We want an endorsement from like Audible or like, I don't know, Hyperion, like Hyperion Publishing or whatever. It's a Disney publisher.
Oh yeah. So what are we talking about?
Whatever. So today we are going to be talking about a very long series. Okay, it's for the you avid readers, it's probably not even that long, but for
14
average,
books.
It's 14 books.
That's a long series.
The Warhammer franchise has like over 100. Hell, the Star Wars franchise has over 100. And most of at least the Legends books, those were chronological and canon to each other. Hell, like there was a Star Wars series called about this massive intergalactic war called the Yuuzhan Vong War. You've heard of it. That had like over, I think that had over like 20 books, somewhere between 20 to 40 books.
Huh. Interesting.
So anyway, we're reading The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. And
you're reading The Wheel of Time. I'm not even going to try to tackle that shit. Couldn't be me.
So I should say, but we are watching it because you watched it. I've watched it. So, The Wheel of Time is a book series by a man named Robert Jordan. May he rest in peace. He did unfortunately pass away. Well, I should have looked that up before we started, but
he passed away before the series ended because I think the last book or two were written by somebody else.
It was like the last 3 or 4 books.
So
Robert. Just a little fun facts about the Wheel of Time before we get started. Robert Jordan originally meant for this series to last at least 3 books, maybe 5 at the most. But as he continued to develop and write the series and come up with the story overall, there was just so much that he put into it. This was definitely like, there was just so much passion put into this that it ended up stretching to 14 novels, with the last 3, I think, being written by another author. Let me see here. Let me look up Robert Jordan. Yeah, so he passed away September 16th, 2007. His novels were the last few books were finished by another author, Brandon Sanderson. But yeah, let me see. Brian Sanderson. Yep, 14. So Brandon Sanderson, I'm sorry. He ended up finishing off Jordan's work with books, with the last 3 books, so 12, 13, and 14. So those were the 3 books that he ended up writing. He was able to close off Jordan's series because Jordan had written so many notes, so many detailed notes that he had enough to go off of. And I mean, by this point, if he had been following Jordan's work for all this time, you read all the books and get a good idea of how the characters are like. He was able to finish writing these books with the conclusion to the entire series with A Memory of Light, which is book 14. But we're not going to be focusing on book 14 today. We're going to be focusing on book 1, which is called The Eye of the World. Now, Amazon has adapted book 1 into a series, has adapted the series into the books into a series. There's currently 2 seasons out, with each season following along to the plot of the books. So season 1, although it does not have like the actual name of the book, it is based off of the Eye of the World. So now, thing about the Wheel of Time, I will say, is that if you watch the show, whether you've watched it yet, or if you've already watched it or you haven't watched it, you just gotta remember there's a lot of lore in these books. There's a lot. He ended up, I wasn't kidding when I said that he ended up just coming up with so many ideas for the story that he ended up stretching what was originally supposed to be a 3 novel series to a 14 novel series. Yeah. So, and I have to say, like, for anybody who enjoys a book with a lot of diversity, this book has a lot of diversity. All right, it's not just centered around one culture, because in book 1, the overall culture that you may notice is like something out of medieval Europe. So like something very similar to English culture. But then as the characters begin to branch out into the world and more of this world is revealed and described in these books, you realize that there's so many other different cultures that Robert Jordan included in these books. Like, he took inspiration from cultures like India, some Southeast Asian countries, other Western and Eastern Europe countries as well. Hell, and he also took inspiration from other authors as well, like definitely, like I'm just gonna call it out right now. There is a desert people called the Aiel, and the Aiel are based off of, they have similarities to the Fremen from Dune. Yeah, but the thing is though, is they're not like, whereas the Fremen from Dune, their culture is definitely based off of Middle Eastern culture, like Persian and Arabian. The Aiel are very similar to, I can't really say Irish or Scottish because they don't wear kilts, or they don't have like this typical, like, I'm sorry, the kilts aren't really a defining factor of Irish culture, but just other things that were typically Irish. Their culture, I can't really say what culture they're based off of, but based on like their physical appearance, the Aiel their overall appearance is similar to, like, they all have their hair color ranges from like bright red to blonde or even like dark brown, but red, their red hair color is very common.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, they're very tanned. So I would say like there is a culture of, there's a small like demographic of people that are born with very pale hair, but they have very dark skin. It's either an Atlantic or a Pacific Islander people. So they have so, and their physical features are very striking because while they have like this very dark, uh, like they have very dark brown skin, but they have blue eyes and blonde hair.
Interesting.
Yeah. There's people, I don't know the name of the country or like where they come from. I'll have to look that up later. But the Aiel are kind of similar. Their skin isn't really dark. Their skin color isn't really dark, but it is described as being very tan due to their to where they come from, which is like it's like a, I would say the desert land that they come from is very similar to Death Valley, Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not so much as like sandy dunes, like just sand as far as you can see. It's more of like cracked, dry earth, desert shrubbery, and other like really like harsh, hardy plants that can survive in these kind of climates. The Aiel are known for being really like, they're badass warriors. Like, they are badass. But the Aiel don't really make an appearance in book 1. They're kind of like mentioned offhandedly a couple times here and there, but it isn't until book 2 and book 3 that we really start seeing more of the Aiel.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys got a lot to look forward to, because honestly, they're probably my favorite. They're my favorite group of characters in this book series. But we should go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and just dive into the story, because there is a lot. Hell, the prologue just sets up. The prologue takes place 3,000 years into the past. At the end of what is,
Jesus.
Yeah. So the story, it's not one of those stories where it'll jump, like have different time jumps, like it'll go from like the past to the present to the future.
Mm-hmm.
But it references significant events in the past. Real quick, Devin, future Devin, cut this part out. I may have to step away just for a second because my aunt is coming over and she needs me to open the door for her.
Okay.
But she'll be here in a few minutes, so I'll let you know.
Okay.
Anyway, so to start out, in the prologue, it takes place in one of the previous ages before the current age, because the time frame that this book takes place is called the Third Age, with the First Age being a time frame called the Age of Legends. The Age of Legends it's called the Age of Legends because it was a time of pure technological advancement, as well as like we have technological, scientific, philosophical, societal advancement. All right, and in the Wheel of Time, since it is a fantasy novel, it's not just technology, but there's magic. So there are people who have the ability to draw energy from this metaphysical force called the True Source. Now, people who are able to draw upon this power are called channelers. And the way the magic works in this world is it's weave-based. So when they draw energy, they weave threads of the power together, and depending on how they weave it, and depending on the type of threads that they weave together, they can get different effects. And the threads are... What was I talking about? Okay, so channelers...
Yeah.
I could, honestly, we could do a whole episode talking about the True Source and how the channelers use their magic. But I mean, I won't go too much into it because in book 1 they don't really talk too much about how the True Source is used or how the magic is woven together. But I will say this. So channelers, even though their power, regardless of their channelers, was in my train of thought. So the true source, every channeler draws their power from the same place, but the true source itself has a duality nature. All right. In fact, the order of channelers called the Aes Sedai, back in the Age of Legends, the symbol for their organization, their society, was it was basically the Taoist yin yang symbol. So circle with a sinuous line, separating it into two halves. Like one half is white with a little black dot in the center, and the other half is black with a little white dot in the center. So it's like two commas put together. And they use this symbol as a representation of the true source because the true source is divided into a male and female half. So the male half, which is black comma, is called Sidon. And the female half, which is the upside down white comma, is called Sidar. And they represent it this way because men and women, male and female channelers, can only draw power from their respective half of the true source. So men can only draw upon the male half of the true source, while women can only draw upon the female half. And each half has their own strengths and weaknesses. But it does cause a bit of a disconnect between male and female channelers because women are technically weaker channelers than men. Men are able to draw upon more power from the true source than women are. But whereas the men have just the pure raw strength of the true, being able to just rely on pure raw strength, the women are able to not only weave more intricate and complex spells, they can also create links with each other. So they're able to create emphatic links with other women and even male channelers. And when they do that, it allows them to increase their power and direct a larger flow of the true source. So it's like a form of collaborative magic. Women can do that, but men can't. And there's other things that put like that women have that men don't, and same with men, and it's the same with the men. And the thing is that the biggest disconnect between the male and female channelers is that they can't see each other's weaves. So for regular non-channeler people, like people who can't channel from the true source, they can't see the energy that flows into a channeler or the weaves themselves. So when channeler begins to use their power, like normal people, they don't see anything happening until it happens. Right? So if they decide to shoot a fireball at you, you're not going to know it's happening until, fireball.
Oh.
But, however, female channelers, when they begin to draw power from the true source, to other female channelers, it looks like a aura of golden light appears around them, and it's kind of the same for men. But the thing is, when a male does that and a woman looks at them, they can't tell if they're channeling. They can't see that energy, and they can't see the weaves that they create. So so that line in the Taoist symbol dividing the two halves is basically a line that prevents each other from seeing what the others are doing. But in the Age of Legends, they were so technologically advanced in both. Of course, they were so advanced in forms of technology and also weaving that they found ways to get around this. Like women can create links with men, and it allows them to perform collaborative weaves. But it's all done based on feel. But things get pretty dramatic. So towards the end of the Age of Legends, a group of Aes Sedai researchers, they discovered that there was potentially another metaphysical force out there similar to the true source, but different altogether. Similar in that you can weave spells just like you can with a true source, but unlike the true source, this new metaphysical power is not divided into male or female halves. It is just one singular power. So if they could figure out a way to harness this power, then they will eliminate that barrier separating men and women, truly putting them on equal levels. It won't be just like, oh, women can link with each other and weave more complicated flows, and men can are just have pure raw strength in the power. All right. But the problem is that this new metaphysical force was not really meant for them to be used. So this group of channelers, they theorized the only way to reach this power was to use their power to bore a hole into the fabric of the pattern, or reality itself. The pattern is basically synonymous with time and space. It's like, the different outcomes of our decisions, because how time works in the Wheel of Time, of course, is basically it's cyclical. So events are constantly repeating themselves, and how the wheel turns determines how the pattern is shaped. Right? It's very complicated. I won't go into it too much, but they thought, we're going to try to reach this new source of power by drilling into the fabric of reality to reach it. But what they didn't know was that, one, this power comes from a malevolent force, and two, they forgot who this malevolent force was, because the Age of Legends, it had lasted for so long that the people forgot that in ages long forgotten, there used to be this very powerful adversary that was constantly trying to remake the world in his image, and was constantly basically just trying to destroy it. And since the Age of Legends, this society knew nothing but peace for so long, they forgot about this guy. So when they bored the hole into reality, they bored a hole into another dimension that actually happens to be the prison of this outer being called the Dark One. So there is a creator. The people of this series believe in a godly figure they call a creator. He created everything. He exists in everything. And then for channelers, the true source comes from the creator. All right. Well, since the creator represents everything that is light and that exists, the Dark One is the antithesis of the creator. He represents everything that is death and darkness, so non-existence. So when these Aes Sedai bored a hole into reality, they bore a hole into the prison that the creator created to contain the Dark One. And when they did that, his darkness was able to touch the world. And this started what became known as the War of Power. So the Dark One was able to touch the world, and when he did that, his influence affected millions of people, billions even, and a good number of them decided that they wanted power. Like, we don't want to live this same ever repeating pattern. We want to change that. We want to break the pattern, and we're going to pledge ourselves to the Dark One. And out of these people that pledged themselves to the Dark One, there was a group of people that became known as the Forsaken. The Forsaken was a group of 13 Aes Sedai who were probably the most powerful channelers of their age. They all declared themselves for the Dark One. The Dark One rewarded them by giving them more power, basically access to that power that they were looking for in the first place, and immortality. So now, channelers naturally can live for hundreds of years because of the life-giving effects of the true source, but it doesn't make them immortal. The Dark One gave the Forsaken access to his power, which is actually called the true power. And with it, it makes them immortal and allows them to do things that you couldn't do with the true source. Like the true source, you can heal people, but you can't use it to heal yourself. You need to get another channeler to heal you if you're injured or have a disease. Whereas the true power allows you to basically just heal yourself whenever you want. So this war of power lasted for centuries, and the dark was winning. It wasn't until the very end when a very powerful channeler on the side of the light, his name was Luz Theron Telemon. Luz Theron, realizing that they were going to lose, but he wasn't going to give up without a fight, he gathered together a large force of about 10,000 men. So 10,000. He gathered an army of about 10,000 men, as well as an army of 100 of his most powerful male channelers. And they launched an all-out assault on the Dark One's fortress. And the outcome of this final battle, all 10,000 of his soldiers were killed. The companions, the 100 men that he took with him, the 100 channelers he took with him, they were able to overcome the Dark One's servants, the Forsaken, and Luz Theron, using his power, he was able to seal away the Dark One alongside his 13 Forsaken. He did this by creating these seals. Now, if you watch the show towards the end of the season, you see one of these seals, but it's like this big platform with the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai engraved on it. Devin, you finished the season, right?
Yes, I finished season 1.
Okay, cool. So you remember at the end when the main character Rand has that final confrontation with the Dark One.
Mm.
Note the quotes. The Dark One.
Mm.
And that final confrontation ends with that seal that he was standing on breaking. You saw it, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, the books, the seals are not these big, like, I'd say about 5 to 6 feet in diameter plates. They're actually about the size of your average dinner plates. But at the end of this final confrontation with the Dark One, Luz Theron creates 7 seals.
Mm-hmm.
These seals, at least in the books, were about frisbee size. They were about the size of your average dinner plate. They were engraved with the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai, and they were made from this mystical substance called Quendilar. Quendilar is this indestructible material, and when I say indestructible, it is truly indestructible. It cannot be broken. It cannot be. It doesn't age. It doesn't wear out. It's unbreakable. So he created these 7 seals and locked the Dark One away alongside his 13 followers. Now, this is where everything goes wrong. He succeeds in sealing away the Dark One and sealing the bore that was created by the Aes Sedai and sealing away his 13 and sealing away the Forsaken. But just as the seals were being put into place, the Dark One used that as an opportunity to initiate a counterstroke. And this counterstroke was to flood as much of his power into Luz Theron himself. So when he did that, he infected the male half of the true source with a taint. This dark, this oily, corruptive substance that engulfed the male half of the true source. And as a direct result of this, every male channeler went mad. It was like a ripple effect. So Luz Theron and his 100 companions, when they were basically at ground zero when this happened. So they all instantly went mad, completely mad. Yep. And from there, it just spread. So for them, they went mad right off the bat. But for other male channelers that were still across the world, as they continue to use the true source, every time they draw more power from Sidon, they're drawing in that taint, that darkness. And over time, it causes a deterioration of their mind. So they slowly begin to just completely lose their sense of self, and they become very dangerous and violent. So completely to the point where they begin to lash out at everyone around them, and they start killing everything around them. So Luz Theron Telamon, who was also known as the Dragon, went on a rampage. The Dark One taints the male half of the true source, causing every male channeler to lose their mind. For Luz and his 100 companions, instantaneous. They all go mad right at that point. Everyone else, all across the world, they slowly start losing their minds, but in the end, it ends with the same result. They go mad and they become extremely violent, and they start lashing out at everything around them. So, Luz Theron Telamon, the dragon, succeeded in sealing away the Dark One, thus saving the world. But at the same time, he broke it. And when this happened, Luz, after the Dark One was sealed away, Luz and his 100 companions go on a rampage. So they leave Shyle Gul, which is the name of the fortress of the Dark One's fortress, and they return to their homes and they start killing everybody. They're just so at the end of the War of Power, much of the society had more or less collapsed. A lot of let me tell you something. The War of Power was so devastating. Like, entire nations were destroyed, landscapes were changed, mountains were leveled, new mountains were created, deserts became oceans, and vice versa. Oceans became deserts. All right. By the end of the War of Power, the landscape wasn't the same. It had completely changed.
Oh no!
But then the breaking of the world happened, and it changed even further. Because before, their civilization was still salvageable. They could still rebuild. All right, much of their society was still standing. All right, it's pretty much had escaped the destruction of the Dark One's forces. But then the Dark One was sealed away, and all the male channelers all across the world began to go mad, and they all started going on rampages, killing everything and everyone, destroying cities, reshaping landscapes. It was a bloodbath. So this started the Second Age, which only lasted about like a couple centuries, and that was called the Break. It was called the Breaking of the World. So male channelers rampaging, destroying everything. Towards the end of this chapter, this was all happening in the prologue. I just want to point that out. I may have thrown in a little extra information there, but not everything. I went a little too further into detail, but still, this is still the prologue. And so towards the end of this chapter, we find Luz Theron and he had returned to his home. He had like his own castle fortress, and everyone in his home was dead. He had killed everyone by creating this pulse of lightning that just instantaneously fried everyone to death, including his wife and children. So
like you do.
Like you do when you go mad. So Luz Theron ended up killing everyone, including his family, and so we find him standing in his home, surrounded by his dead loved ones, and suddenly another figure, a dark figure, appears. Now, the book makes it seem like this is the Dark One.
Mhm.
All right, but this figure addresses himself as Balthamo. Or I'm sorry, it's not Balthamo. It's
Something else.
yeah. Come on. I don't want to really spoil it by just telling you like who this figure really is, but
Course.
honestly, season 2 of Wheel of Time spoils who this figure really is, because like you actually don't figure out who this guy is until book 3. Who this guy really is until book 3. So I'm just thinking, should I just tell you guys now?
I mean, spoiler alert. You don't want to hear it. Skip 5-10 seconds.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Because I at this point I know most of the names of all of the Forsaken.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see here. Because he calls himself something else. What does he call himself? It was like Balsamon. That's his. So the figure that appears is just an apparition. It's not He's not physically there, and he addresses himself as Balsamon. Spoiler alert: it's actually one of the Forsaken. It's not the Dark One himself. It's not the Dark One himself, but a certain leader of the Forsaken, the chief lieutenant of the Dark One and general of the Forsaken. When they were sealed away, this particular Forsaken was only half sealed. So, because of that, the Forsaken, when they were sealed away, they were locked in this supposedly eternal dreamless sleep. But this guy, Balsamon, or at least he calls himself Balsamon, was only half sealed. And this particular Forsaken has an ability called dreamwalking. So even though he's half sealed, he ends up enduring this cycle of dreamless sleep to somewhat half awareness. So he's still asleep, but he's become aware. Every few centuries, he becomes aware. Like he wakes, so to speak. And when he does this, he begins using his power of dreamwalking to enter the dreams of other people. So this is kind of how he was able to. This is kind of how he was able to project his consciousness in front of Luz Theron, because he was still only half sealed, and so he was still able to touch. This Forsaken was still able to touch the world. So he appears before Luz Theron and begins taunting him and talking about how this is just going to be a repeat of an endless cycle of repeating events. And the thing is, he realizes, like, wait, this is no fun. I'm gloating / mocking you, and you're still completely mad, lost in your madness. So, Balsamon uses his power to push back the madness, so kind of restore a bit of Luz's lucidity, I guess you could say. And when Luz Theron comes back to himself, Balsamon, like, mocks him some more and points out, look what you've done. And that's when the dragon looks down and realizes he's killed everybody he's loved. And in this moment of just pure grief, Luz Theron draws in an obscene amount of energy from the true source. Now, the thing about channelers is that they're like batteries. All right. And the thing about batteries is that they can only hold so much energy. All right, some can hold more than others, but the result is always the same if you overcharge it. And that's exactly what happened to Luz. Except being the most powerful male channeler of his age, that turned out to be a very powerful blast, so deadly and so devastating that it literally tore a hole into the earth, creating a volcano. So he kills himself, or I'm sorry, he unalives himself in a fiery flash of light, like a bolt of lightning shoots down from the sky, strikes him, he explodes, that blast bores right through the Earth's crust, releasing a huge flow of lava that creates a new volcano, because the area that where his home was actually like kind of like a flat foresty area, maybe like slightly hilly, not a mountain in sight. Well, now there's a mountain, volcano. And yep, 3,000 years later, that very volcano becomes known as the Dragon Mountain, the place of Lews Theron's death. And in the wake of his death, of course, the world continues to break. 3,000 years later, 3,000 years later, the Age of Legends is just that, an Age of Legends. Most people have forgotten many of the significant historical events that happened. Everything that's happened in the Age of Legends is just myth now. But one thing everybody remembers vividly and still fear was the breaking of the world. The Age of Madness, or the breaking of the world, was came to an end when the remaining channelers, the female channelers that were left, they came together and they completely wiped out all the male channelers. Sadly, that was the only way that they could protect the world, was by killing their loved ones, killing all the men. And the Aes Sedai, as it was, collapsed and became divided. So now, 3,000 years later, the Aes Sedai that exists in the Third Age is a society of all women channelers. Their symbol, the Taoist symbol, has been divided and has also been divided. So it is no longer, the yin yang symbol is not really used as the whole singular piece, but now the new symbol of the Aes Sedai is the upside down white comma. So that symbol is called the Flame of Tar Valon, which is the city that the Aes Sedai make their home in. Which is actually, it's at the base of the Dragon Mount, where the where the dragon killed himself. So now, one thing I love about those books, Robert Jordan starts off every book with pretty much like the first chapter of every book. It starts off pretty much the same. So I'm just gonna read you like the first paragraph. The wheel of time turns, and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again. In one age, called the Third Age by some, an age yet to come, an age long past, a wind rose in the mountains of mist. The wind was not the beginning. There are neither beginnings nor endings to the turning of the wheel of time, but it was a beginning. So that's like a perfect description of how time works in the Wheel of Time, because it's cyclical. So everything that happened in these books have already happened before, but it happened so long ago that it's been long forgotten. Hell, like, funny thing is that Amazon, the producers of the Amazon Prime show, said that when they were asked why did they make so many changes from the books, they just they get, I'll give them this, they get this pass because they're like, well, Wheel of Time is cyclical, so events are always repeating themselves, but they're always slightly different from the last. And I'm like,
that's fair.
That's fair. We'll give you that, you bastards.
Utilize the themes, story themes to their advantage.
I mean, it works. The show was, for what it was, the show is good. There's a lot that they changed, and there was a lot that they took out. They either excluded or they maybe something new. But we'll get to it as we get to it. So the story starts with 5 young individuals that live in a small land called the Two Rivers. They all are living out their lives in this small village of Emansfield. These 5 characters that the story is centered around is 3 boys, Rand L. Thor, Perrin Ibarra, and Matrim Coffin, or Matt, and Egwene Alvir, and the village wisdom, or she's basically like the herbalist slash healer slash doctor slash corporal punishment, Nynaeve Almira. These 5 characters, they're just living their normal lives. Perrin is a blacksmith's apprentice. Matt helps his father with his farm. Rand does the same. He's a sheep herder. And Nynaeve is the wisdom of the village. Egwene is the daughter of the village innkeeper, and she's the apprentice to Nynaeve to become the next wisdom. All these characters are pretty young. Their ages range from like their late teens to their early 20s, with Nynaeve being somewhere in her mid 20s. She's the oldest out of all of them, and so they're going about their normal lives. They're preparing for a sort of like harvest festival called Beltane. And as they're preparing for this upcoming festival, 2 strangers enter the village. A noble woman by the name of Moraine Damodred, and her bodyguard, Alan Mandragoran. Now, for people from Emansfield, they're a pretty isolated community. If anything, the villages that are in the Two Rivers, they're pretty isolated from the rest of the world, so they don't really see many newcomers, many outsiders. So anytime there's anybody like besides like peddlers and merchants that come throughout the year, it's always a bit of a like, it's always newsworthy. Like, oh hey, there's somebody new in the village. Who could that be? Though they all notice that there's something off about these 2 strangers, Moraine is going around asking people questions, particularly about any young individuals that were born roughly 20 years ago, and she's asking whether or not they were born in the village. And slowly, the group notices that her attention begins to focus more on the 3 young men, Matt, Perrin, and Rand. She talks to them, asks them a few questions, just harmless questions, really. That just seems like more of like polite. She's very polite, but you could tell that she is like, used to being in charge and used to getting answers she wants. But it's clear that she's interested in these 3 young men specifically. And at one point, she gives each of them a silver mark with a Tarvalon mark. So of course, if you follow like history and stuff like that, back in the day, every like city, state, or nation had their own like currency system with their own like gold, silver standards that are stamped and everything like that. Well, the silver Tarvalon mark has a image of a woman on one side and the flame of Tarvalon on the other. If you want to know what the Flame of Tarvalon looks like, I'll actually post one in the chat for you, Devin, so you can see it.
Yes, please do.
But
okay.
So, like I said, it's basically just an upside down comma. And funnily, just like little fun fact, the other half of the yin yang symbol, the black comma, is used in the present age as a symbol for dark friends, people who still pledge themselves to the Dark One. And it's called the Dragon's Fang.
Interesting.
And sometimes the dragon's fang is used as a way, like kind of like so certain controversial real life group whose initials start with 3Ks. Usually those guys will burn a cross in your front yard if they don't like you. Well, in the Wheel of Time, there is a group similar to them, and who make it their life's mission to hunt out dark friends, as well as hunt down Aes Sedai channelers. So they're They're basically a group of witch hunters, and they think anybody who channels is a friend of the dark, regardless of the fact that they actually fight for the light. And if they suspect you of being a dark friend, they will scrawl the dragon's fang on your door. Because even if they don't have proof that you are dark friends, they like to make trouble by doing shit like that. They're called the Children of the Light. Hate them. They're like the worst. They're the absolute worst. Even though they're supposed to be quote unquote good guys, and they fight the dark, they're just a whole organization of scumbags. And they wear all white. I don't trust people who wear all white.
Neither do I.
But the Children of the Light do make an appearance in this book, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So not long after Moraine and Lan make their appearance in Eamon's Field, the village comes under attack by a group of creatures called Trollocs. Trollocs, or half-men, are these anthropomorphic chimera. So furries don't come for me when I say this, but think of all of your Fursona fantasies, but twist them and make them ugly, and that's what you got for a Trolloc.
Damn.
Because Trollocs range from looking from like half men, half wolves or dogs, half men, half goat creatures, half men, half bird creatures. They just have beaks and feathers and maybe like the talons for feet. But other than that, they're ugly. They stink. They kill, and they'll eat anything in sight. And Trollocs are led by another form of half-men, because usually like these dark creatures that fight for the Dark One are generally referred to as half-men, but they're broken down into creatures like Trollocs, which is what I just described, and another creature called Myrddraal, or Fades. The Myrddraal are more intelligent than their idiotic Trolloc cousins. They are described as having gray skin. They wear these black cloaks that even when they move around, or like if there's wind, the cloaks don't even like billow in the wind or even shift. They just kind of like hang there, which is very unnerving. But the most like disturbing feature about them is that they got no eyes. Where their eyes should be is just like a flat face. It's just like a flat space.
That's weird.
And the Myrddraal have abilities, so to speak. They're able to fade into shadows and appear and disappear in a shadow, and somehow that allows them to travel from place to place almost instantaneously. They can create a link with themselves to the Trollocs that they are leading. So this allows them to control the Trollocs and direct them more easily, because without a Myrddraal to direct and command the Trolloc force, Trollocs will just kill everything indiscriminately, even each other. Yeah, but usually it's other non-Trollocs, but if they got nothing else to kill or fight, they'll just start fighting or killing each other. So a huge band, like a small band of Trollocs attack Eamon's Field. Rand is with his father a few miles outside of the village, but the Trollocs do attack that. His father, who his whole life he thought was just a normal farmer, pulls out a sword and starts fighting the Trollocs back, and the two of them it managed to escape, but his father Tam is wounded, unfortunately, and the problem with getting a wound from a Trolloc blade is Trolloc blades, the way that they are designed and the way that they are made, they're made to not only be deadly but also to be toxic. So if you get a wound from one of their blades, it'll fester and get infected really quickly.
Gross.
So unless you have a specific type of medicine to treat it, or an Aes Sedai to heal it, you won't survive. So Rand, desperate to help his father, he doesn't know this because no one in Eamon's Field has ever seen a Trolloc before, except maybe Tam, because as it's revealed later, Tam used to be a soldier who fought in the Aiel Wars, and he may have encountered Trollocs at one point. It's implied that he has fought Trollocs before, but it's never really confirmed. But so anyway, he drags his wounded father back to the village, and he finds that it is in a state of disarray. The Trollocs had already been driven from the village because the thing about Trollocs is that even though they'll kill anything in sight, they're also cowards. So if you manage to stand up to them, they will run away. They realize oh shit, we bit off too big of a handle. We bit off too much, more than we could handle. They'll run. So the villagers were able to rally themselves, and they drove off the small force of Trollocs. And it was also thanks in no small part to Moraine and Lan, because you've seen episode 1. For those of you who've seen the show, in the show when the Trollocs attack, Moraine reveals herself to be an Aes Sedai, and she uses her power to fight the Trollocs and drive them from the village, which it was this really cool spectacle. I know that got you hooked on the show. That scene alone got you hooked on the show.
Yeah, it sure did.
Yeah, well, unfortunately in the book there wasn't any of that. Rand doesn't even, from Rand's perspective, he doesn't get a chance to see it. He just hears about it secondhand, and it really wasn't much. She chucked a few fireballs and called down a bolt of lightning, and that was enough to send the Trollocs running. And of course they also saw Lan using his sword work to fight back. So they were able to defend and drive the small force of Trollocs away from the village. When Rand realizes that Moraine is an Aes Sedai, because when she appears in the village in the book, she doesn't reveal herself to be an Aes Sedai. And which is actually really common for the Aes Sedai when they're traveling. They don't really tell you that they're Aes Sedai unless you actually know what to look for in terms of physical description of an Aes Sedai. You won't really know that they're Aes Sedai.
Because why would they tell you?
Yeah, because while most lands, universally the Aes Sedai are feared, but in a more of a respectful way. It's a more of that kind of respectfully feared. Okay, we know these ladies are some bad bitches, so you don't want to fuck with them, right? And there are certain small nations that just outright hate them. There's one nation called Amadisha, which is where the Children of the Light, or the White Cloaks, come from. That is the country that they have their home base. And there's another country called Tyr. Channeling is completely illegal, but whenever a girl begins showcasing their ability to channel, they are shipped off. They don't kill them; they just ship them off. They're like, "All right, we don't want you here," so they'll just send them to Tar Valon so they can start their training as an Aes Sedai.
Damn.
Yep. But that is the main. I just want to point that out. That's a big difference from the book and the show. In the show, when Moraine shows up, she immediately flashes her ring, and everyone realizes Aes Sedai, because Aes Sedai, they all wear these rings. The way the rings look like in the show is different from how they're described in the book. In the show, they're these golden rings they're kind of like these big bulky rings with a different colored gem, and the color of the gem usually describes which Aja they're from.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about the Ajas a little bit later. But Moraine is from the Blue Aja, though she's very on brand even in the book because she usually wears all blue silk dresses. In the book, she wears a golden chain headdress with a blue stone on it.
Yeah.
And when she's first introduced, she's actually carrying an ivory, like a wooden staff, like a white wood staff, which she uses. You'll see throughout the book, she'll use it as like an arcane focus to like shoot fireballs and like help her weave her to help her channel. But we'll get to that, and we'll get to that later. Now, I want to point out that Moraine in the TV show and in the book are simultaneously very similar to each other, but different. So, in the show, Moraine is like right off the bat. She tells the 5 main characters that the reason why she's here in Eamon's Field is because she suspects that the dragon was reborn. Lews Therin Talamon has finally been reborn, and it could be one of you 5 individuals. She immediately tells them right off the bat, "I'm looking for the dragon reborn." But in the book, she doesn't tell him shit. So the thing about Moraine is she is a noble woman. She actually did come from a country called Caerhine. And the thing about Caerhine is that they have this practice called the Game of Houses, which we had this discussion, which is probably where the Game of Thrones got its inspiration from. And before you guys try to tell me no, Game of Thrones was original, I want you to look up the publishing dates for the Game of Thrones and for Wheel of Time, and you'll find that book 2, which is when the Game of Houses is first mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
That book was published well before Game of Thrones ever came out. So don't talk to me about, oh, he stole that from Game of Thrones. No, he didn't. He invented it. So the thing is, Moraine. The thing about the Game of Houses is that is basically a political game of manipulation and trying to get one over the next. Every noble trying to get one over the next noble in line. And Moraine, she's very manipulative. In fact, she can be subtle when she's in her manipulations, but thing is, it's very clear that she's trying to influence you to go in the direction that she wants you to go.
Yeah.
Right. And she's good. She knows how to do her shit. Whereas the Moraine in the show, she does it. It's clear that she does manipulate people. But at the same time, it's just more of like, she's more kind of upfront with it. Like, hey, I need you guys to come with me to Tar Valon because I think one of you is the Dragon Reborn. Now, you can either stay here and wait for the Trolloc forces to come and capture you or kill you, or you can come with me and you can save the rest of your village. Whereas the Moraine in the book, she's just like, well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why these Trollocs came here, but you know what? From what I've gathered, they have a strange. I couldn't help but notice that they focused their attention on you 3 boys. They attacked your farm, Ran. They attacked your farm, Ran, and they attacked your father's farm, Matt. And they also came for the house that your family owns here in the village. And then they also attacked the smithy, the smithy shop where you're apprentice at, Perrin.
And ooh,
interesting.
How weird.
That's so weird. You know what? They have a strange fascination with you guys. And look, don't take my word for it, but I think the 3 of you may be in danger. And until we figure out why. Oh, no, you're not. I don't think you're a dark friend. Definitely not. But it's concerning. It's concerning, and I think you should come with me to Tarvalon, where we can figure things out and where you guys will be safe. Oh, don't worry about your village. They don't care about your village. They care about you three. You come with me, your village will be safe.
I see what she did there.
Uh-huh. She does not reveal at all, at least, like, hell, she doesn't even reveal to them, even at the end of the book, she doesn't even reveal to them why she came to the village in the first place, and that is to seek out Luz Theron Talamon Reborn, or the Dragon Reborn.
Then I wonder why she told them in the show.
I don't know, but, I mean, I think for her, they really played on the whole, like, Aes Sedai can't lie, because the Aes Sedai, when a sister of the order ascends to their full rank, because there's 3 levels in their training. There is the novice, which is that's their beginning. They start training how to learn how to channel and all the ways of the Aes Sedai. And then after they reach a certain point, they are elevated to the level of accepted, which is like basically it's more of like an adept learner. So they've got experience, they have more knowledge on how to use the true source responsibly, and then that's where they begin to really learn what it means to be an Aes Sedai. Of course, they're able to like continue their own studies at their own pace instead of like the strict regiment that they have as novices, and they also begin to study and figure out which Aja would I fit better in, because there are 7 Ajas in the Aes Sedai. Blue, red, green, yellow, white, gray, and brown. I always forget about brown.
Oh yeah, brown.
Yep. Each Aja has their own specialty and has their own like sort of role that they play in the world. Ultimately, they're all hoping to guide. Their ultimate goal is to guide the world in the right direction and prepare themselves for the final battle, which is known as Tamar Gaiden. Alright, and so with Moraine being a blue Aja, in the show they call them the spies. They're the ones that they tend to be like the lone wolves. They do a lot of traveling, they gather information, but really it's more complex. They take up causes. All right. If they find a cause that they believe will lead a nation, a person, like an influential person, or entire group of people in the right direction that will make things more favorable not only for Tarvalon but for the world, they'll take up that cause. They'll manipulate these people, but really the manipulation is all for the greater good in the end. Whereas, like, the Red Aja, which honestly the Red Aja is my least favorite, because, for one thing, they are a group of misandrists. For those of you who don't know, it's like misogynist, except women who hate men. Okay. Red Aes Sedai of the Red Aja, their main role is to hunt down any male channeler, capture them, bring them to Tarvalon, where they will be gentled. And gentling is when you are permanently severed from the source. You're not dead, but you'll wish you'll be dead, because the thing about the source is that it is addictive. Drawing upon that energy into yourself, it gives you like this, like it's like being on crack. All right, everything is dialed up to 20. All right, your senses, you feel more alive and rejuvenated.
Yeah.
All right, but being cut off from it permanently, it's like being forced to go, like, cut yourself off from an addictive substance cold turkey. Except that addiction never goes away. And in the end, most people who have been severed, because so severed or severing is the gender neutral term for the process of being cut off from the source. Men are gentled, while women are stilled. So, same shit, just the gender, like, the term that is more gender specific. So that's what the Reds do. The Yellows are the healers. They study healing and any form of healing practices, and they use their power to heal, even though they're not very good at it, which is later revealed. The greens are known as the Battle Aja. They're called that because every Aes Sedai, unless you're a red, reds, they don't do this, but every Aja, every Aes Sedai takes on a bodyguard called a warder, which is what Lan is. And these warders, they are their protectors, their bodyguards, their companions. When they take on a warder, the Aes Sedai will create they'll bond with their warder, which is they create a permanent emphatic link with their warder. So they're basically synchronizing themselves with their warder, so they can feel whatever their warder is feeling. So like their moods, or like if their warder is in pain, they can feel that. But it's not really just so they can feel what their warder is feeling, and vice versa. It's more so that way the warder gets some extra benefits from being bonded to an Aes Sedai. Like it's hinted that they live longer, so like they get so their life is extended more. Their senses become heightened, and overall they become like better suited for doing their job, for survival, and for protecting their Aes Sedai. Now the Green Aja, now typically Aes Sedai only take on one warder, but members of the Green Aja traditionally will take on more. They'll take on as many as like 8 at a time. And they do this because they are preparing themselves for the final battle. So they train themselves to be more ready to fight. They take on extra warders. So like they're ready to lead an entire battalion of like these souped up soldiers into the final battle. And you see blue, red, green, yellow. See here, the brown Aja, they are the scholars. They study history, texts. Their goal is to preserve knowledge in any capacity as they can. The white Aja, they are the logical ones, and honestly the most useless out of all the Ajas. And then there's the gray Aja, which are the politicians. They are the leaders, so to speak. They tend to take a more active role in negotiations, establishing treaties between nations. Anything political, they specialize in it. Now, there is an unofficial 8th Aja, but it's a hidden Aja that the other Ajas fear, because if it is true that this Aja exists, then that means darkness has touched even them. And this Aja is called the Black Aja. And they're the Aes Sedai who pledge themselves to the Dark One. They're not like the Forsaken, but they still serve the Dark One. And they're considered Dark Friends. So so Moraine, I went off on a whole tangent. There's just so much lore in this. It's
so much shit.
Huh?
There's so much shit. Yeah.
There's so much shit.
Lot.
Yeah. There's a lot. So just to get back on track, Moraine convinces. So in the show, Moraine takes Rand, Perrin, Mat, and Egwene because she thinks those 4 could be the Dragon Reborn, and somewhat to an extent Nynaeve, even though Nynaeve is way older than the age that she suspects the Dragon Reborn would be by now.
Mm-hmm.
But Nynaeve ends up joining them, but not until much later. In the book, however, she's not really concerned with Egwene or Nynaeve. She's actually more focused on Perrin, Mat, and Ren, because they're all the same age, about 20 years old, and it was clear that the Trollocs were focusing on those 3. So she convinces the 3 of them to leave Eamon's Field with her and head to Tar Valon, will not only be safe, but it will also draw the dark forces away from their village to protect it. Now, as they're leaving, in the book, Egwene actually ends up jumping on this bandwagon because she realizes that she wants more from life than that of a village wisdom. Just a simple, small villager. And Moraine readily accepts her as a part of their crew because Moraine sees something in Egwene that is actually beneficial. Egwene has the spark. She has the inborn spark to become an Aes Sedai. So, with the thing about channelers, there are two types of channelers aside from the genders. There are channelers who are born with the ability to channel. So, like, they'll naturally touch the source on their own, which can be dangerous without guidance, but still, they'll develop the ability on their own. And naturally, the Aes Sedai really want to find these people because if they don't and they touch the source without guidance, they could die because the source touching the source for the first time without somebody to help you or to guide you can be fatal. And then the other type are people who can learn how to channel. Now, they're not uncommon, but they're not as rare as people born with the ability.
Mm-hmm.
So, if the thing is, channelers can feel like a certain sense of like, I don't want to say relation, but like they're like a certain sense of closeness with people who have the ability to channel, even if it's whether it's the inborn spark or the ability to learn.
Yeah.
So Moraine quickly realized that that Egwene and even Nynaeve had the spark to the inborn spark to channel. Thing is, at first, Moraine brushes off Nynaeve because Nynaeve is too old. Usually, they only accept the Aes Sedai will only accept young women of a certain age. But once they are past a certain point, they won't accept them, even if they are like very powerful channelers. If they have the potential to be a very powerful channeler, there's like, no, you're too old. Like, no, you're too old. And also, Nynaeve is very combative and had no interest in any dealings with the Aes Sedai. So Moraine was willing to just let her slide. Whereas Egwene was just the right age, and Moraine was like, all right, let's go. And she proves, and Moraine does prove that Egwene has the natural spark by doing a test with her. So she wears that headdress I mentioned earlier with that blue stone. She uses it as a bit of like a focus, and what she does is she channels some power into it. And the way the tests work is it's meant to like draw out the ability in Egwene. So when she channels into the gem, she causes it to like light up, to blink with light a few times. And she does this until Egwene's own natural channeling ability appears and makes the stone light up herself. And depending on how bright the stone lights up determines like, oh well, how powerful you are in the source. And when she does this, Egwene's power comes out and makes the stone blink, a bright flash of light. And Moraine's like, that last little flash of light was all you. And from what I could tell, you're pretty powerful. So that's why. So that was the original reason why Egwene was included in this. She was not actually considered to be potentially the Dragon Reborn. It was mainly just the three boys. So this small party begins their journey north. They reach a village called Terrence Ferry. Anyway, they make their way north. They are continuously pursued by the Trollocs and Myrddraal. And along the way, they meet a bard or a gleeman by the name of Tom Merlin. Now, in the show, Tom does make an appearance in, like, I think episode 2, or it was either 2 or 3, just after they had to escape this dark city called Shadar Logoth. But in reality, in the book, Tom Merlin actually was first introduced in Eamon's Field. He came to the village because of the Beltane Festival, and he ends up going along with them because he decides he not only needs to get the fuck out of the village, but he wants to keep an eye on those boys because he knows that getting involved with the Aes Sedai can lead to trouble.
Yeah.
In their travels, they are actually tracked down by Nynaeve. Because let me tell you something, Nynaeve's personality is she is combative. She's very fierce, and I'm not stuck up, but she's very firm and steadfast in her beliefs. And when Moraine left with her 4 charges, they left in the middle of the night in secret, so that way they don't disturb the village, they don't freak out the villagers, and 2, so that way they don't alert the Trollocs right away to where they went. Because eventually the Trollocs will follow them, but hopefully it ensures that they leave the village alone. But when Nynaeve realizes that they all took off, she was like, oh hell no, and she promises her village that she'll go and get them back, and she tracks them down and actually does find them, which surprises Lan, because Lan is an expert tracker and he knows how to cover their trail. So the way he does that is by leading them in like kind of like an offset direction, so not following the main roads or anything like that. And he does everything he can to like keep their trail hidden. But then out of nowhere, Nynaeve appears like a fiery hurricane, and she goes off on Moraine and the boys and Egwene. She goes off on the whole gang, like, how could you leave? You're coming back with me right now. Blah, blah, blah. Like, and Lan is just caught off guard, like, what the fuck? How did you find us? So it is hinted that even in this book, there's a bit of a romance between Lan and Nynaeve. It's true. But that, honestly, their romance gets dragged all throughout the series. They don't actually, like, even now, I'm only on book 6, and they're not even together yet. And, like, book 6 takes place, like, about almost 3 years later.
And they're still not together yet?
Yeah, but there's all kinds of drama with that. There's stuff. But, so, Moraine makes it clear that under no uncertain terms that these guys won't be going back to Eamon's Field. 1, because the boys are in danger, and their very presence in the village puts the village in danger. And 2, Egwene chose to leave the village, and she wishes to come with Moraine to Tar Valon to begin her training as an Aes Sedai. And while Nynaeve accepts rather begrudgingly that they need her help, they need Moraine's help, at least until they can get the Trollocs off their back, she still is determined to bring them all home. So she decides to travel with them. They continue their journey in a more easterly direction, and because they're trying to stay close to one of the main roads, because it'll eventually lead them to Tar Valon. And also they follow along one of the main rivers. But unfortunately, the Trolloc forces not only triple in number, the numbers of Trollocs chasing them, not only like triple in number, but they force them in a direction that they don't want to go. But Moraine decides, all right, the only way we can lose these guys is if we go to the one place they will not want to go, and that is a dark, desolate city called Shadar Logoth. Shadar
Logoth. That's an interesting name.
Yeah, it is a name from the Old Tongue, and it means the shadows wait. Now, Shadar Logoth was a city that was built after the breaking of the world. Hold on, let me look. All right. So Shadar Logoth was a city that used to be named Ardhol, and it existed it stood about 1,000 years ago, and it was actually a close ally to another kingdom called Manetheren. Manetheren used to be the city of Manetheren used to be in the land that Eamon's Field currently exists. Manetheren no longer exists, but its descendants and its territory reside in the land that is now known as the Two Rivers. All right. Now, Manetheren was destroyed during a brutal 3-century war called the Trolloc Wars, which happened a little over 1,000 years ago, like closer to 2,000 years ago, I think. But one of their closest allies, Eredhall, was supposed to come to their aid at the height of the war, but they didn't, and that was because Eredhall became infested with the darkness. A strange man appeared in the city around that time. Man named he has like a bunch of different names: More Death, Mashadar, and a few other names. But Mashadar is the Mashadar is the name of this man. This man, later entity, that came to take up residence in the city, and he began to corrupt the city, the people. Before, they were very trusting of each other. Eredhall had a very strong sense of camaraderie, or however the hell you say that name.
Oh my god.
Camaraderie.
Yes.
Camaraderie. Yeah, that. We'll go with that. When he came along, he began to whisper in the ears of the nobles and the leadership, and he began to instill the sense of mistrust in them. And eventually, people in the city began turning on each other, fighting. There was a lot of infighting. There was a lot of just dissension in the city. The city had these massive walls, so like because back during the Trolloc Wars, cities had to build these massive walls just to keep the Trolloc forces out. And eventually, after the Trolloc War ended and Manetheren was destroyed, other allies of these two cities came to investigate, like, what happened to Eredhall. They were supposed to come to to Manetheren's aid, but when they reached the city, they found that it was completely empty. There was There was nobody inside the city whatsoever. No bodies, nothing.
Yeah.
And of course, their possessions and anything that was in the city before the people disappeared, they were still there. But there was this sense of like this darkness, this malignant force, with this sense of this evil, like infested the city, and that city became so dark and evil that not even Trollocs or other halfmen will willingly go into that city. You realize how fucked up how evil a place has to be when other evil forces refuse to step foot in there? So, Moraine gets this bright idea. Alright, if we can't outrun them, we can go to the one place they won't go, and that is Shadar Logoth. Eredhall got its new name, Shadar Logoth, because of that malignant force. It's later revealed that Mashadar is this entity that it takes the form of like this mist. At least in the books it does. In the show, it looks like this kind of rot that crawls over the stone and the rest of the city, and it like just eats and disintegrates anything living. Well, the mist does the same thing, and it'll attack anything. Dark Friend, half-men, regular people, doesn't matter who you are, it'll attack and kill you. At first, Moraine tells them to stay close to her, and when they go into the city, they find a place to set up for the night, and Moraine places a ward around the area that they're staying in, so that way during the night, because at night that's when Shadar Logoth is at its most dangerous, they'll still be protected by her wards. Rand, Matt, and Perrin decide to explore the city a little bit. At one point, Rand and Matt encounter another man who calls himself I forgot exactly what he calls himself. Let me see. See, this is how convoluted the story is because one character will have like a dozen different names.
Oh God, that's a nightmare.
Yeah. Devin Cutspot. All right. Honestly, like I said, this one entity has like so many different names. It doesn't matter. Mashadar is really the name used for the entity that is like takes on this mist-like form, while this other entity, well, it's implied that they're the same thing, but the thing is that the evil that resides in Shadar Logoth is not only corruptive, but it's contagious too. So when they enter the city, Moraine warns everybody, whatever, under no circumstances are you to take anything from this city. Even the smallest pebble can infect you with the evil, and you can end up carrying it with you to other places where the evil will grow and overcome. So, but while they're exploring the city, Matt and Perrin, I'm sorry, no, not Matt and Perrin. Matt and Ran encounter a man. Right, at least they think he's a man. They think he's a man. Calls himself More Death. And
more death, not just a little death, but more death.
yes,
Ha,
that's exactly
funny.
it. Anyway, More Death. The thing is, Matt. Well, Rand was just curious about the city and just wanting to see like what a big city is supposed to be like because he's never been in one. Matt is over here more focused on finding treasure. So they're looking around, and when they encounter More Death, Matt is like, "Do you know where the treasure is?" And the guy's like, "Oh yeah, sure, I can show you." And he leads them to this dark basement. It's filled with treasure, but you know,
That's
dark
suspicious.
basement. Suspicious.
Dark basement, evil.
But the thing is, Rand is the only one of the two of them that has any sense. Because he's like, "Oh wait, Matt, we're not even supposed to take." Moraine says we're not supposed to take anything, even this. Remember what she said. And Matt kind of brushes him off, but at the same time, he's starting to get sus vibes from More Death. And turns out More Death was going to try to kill them, but in a panic, Rand, who had taken his father's sword. I should mention something about. Let me just kind of like take a little moment to talk about Rand's sword. So when their village was attacked, his father turns out has a sword from his days as a soldier, but he wasn't just any. Tam Thor, Rand's father, wasn't just any regular soldier. He was a blades master. Or a blade master. And think about in the Wheel of Time, when a swordsman reaches a certain level of proficiency and mastery over swordplay, they can ascend to the rank of blade master. And when they do, they're given a special sword. They kind of look like a Japanese katana, but really they're more described as something like a saber. It's a curved blade. It's a single-edged curved blade with a cross guard and like a two-handed grip. The way the way they look in the show, it makes more sense because the way it's kind of like the way Robert Jordan tried to make the swords in the book look. It's kind of like a cross between a katana and a European longsword, which really doesn't work, especially with the T cross guard. But either way, so in the early days of the Third Age, the Aes Sedai used to make really powerful weapons that were simultaneously unbreakable. So these weapons that they would make were stronger than normal weapons. They would never go dull, and they would never break. But the thing is that when they did that, it led to countless different wars where, men were killing each other, and it eventually forced the Aes Sedai to take on the 3 oaths: never to tell a lie, never to use the power as a weapon, and never to make weapons for men to kill each other with. And they did that third one, especially because of the fact that, we fucked up. We made we made powerful weapons that can't break or dull, and men were
Oh
killing each other over them.
no!
Yeah,
I didn't know.
and
No.
whoopsie, I did a fucky wucky.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's still some of these weapons survived, even though the Aes Sedai don't make these weapons anymore. There are still quite a few of them remaining, and if a noble happens to have a one on hand, and there's a swordsman among their rank that has have proven that they are a master of the sword, they will present the blade to this new blade master, and Tamil Thor happened to get one because he was a blade master. And what makes these swords unique is not only because they have an unbreakable blade, but they also have a stamp of a heron on each side of the blade, and also on the hilt itself. So it's significant because throughout the books, the heron marked blade it marks you as a blade master, and a lot of people end up giving Rand kind of this side eye, like, this young dude here is a blade master. The fuck. But I mean, like, his father didn't care. He's like, you need a sword, take my sword. Where you're going, it's going to be dangerous. So anyway, back to Shadar Logoth. Rand pulls out his sword, and Matt, in a panic, reaches into the treasure pile and pulls out a dagger with a ruby gem embedded into the handle. And they defend themselves against this man, Mordeth. And Mordeth ends up vanishing in this puff of mist. Freaked out, the two of them run back to Moraine to report what they saw. Or they weren't really going to tell her what they saw. They were just like, yeah, we kind of fucked up. Let's not tell her. She might get mad. But whereas Rand didn't touch a single thing in that treasure pile, Matt slipped that dagger he grabbed into his pocket. That's significant. Don't forget that. They go back to Moraine, and unfortunately they don't manage to stay in Shadar Logoth overnight like they planned, because the Myrddraal, who were leading the Trollocs chasing them, forced the Trollocs to enter the city and pursue them. When this happens, Moraine's like, "Ah, shit! They did the one thing I thought they weren't going to do."
Ah, shit! Here we go again.
And pretty much the thing about Shadar Logoth in the book and in the show was that whereas they entered the city willingly to get away from them in the book, and in the show, Moraine was like, "Whatever. Okay, I got a boo-boo in my shoulder that's killing me right now, and I'm probably not going to be conscious for until I get healed. But whatever you do not take us into that city. All right, see ya." And then she just passes out. And then when she comes to, she's like, "Oh shit! You did exactly what I told you not to do." And I was take him into the city. Oh, y'all got me fucked up. Anyway, but so they end up having to escape from the city because the Trollocs are now pursuing them through the city. But as soon as the sun set, this eerie mist begins to appear, like this really thick mist, and it has a life of its own. And this mist is the entity Mashadar. Did I say his name? See, this is where this story got me fucked up, because there's like so many different names for one thing. Is it Massadar or Mashadar? Mashadar. So Mashadar appears out of the night, and it envelops the entire city. And anything that gets caught in the mist immediately dies violently, painfully, gruesomely. It's not a pretty sight. And Moraine tells the others, "Okay, whatever you do, don't run headfirst into the mist. Try to avoid it as much as possible." But at one point, the band ends up getting separated. I think Nynaeve doesn't show up until after they get separated, even in the book.
Mhm.
Can't remember. And the fucked up part is that in the Eye of the World, it's kind of hard to like figure out. Hold on, I could search this shit up. Future Devin cut this. Okay, so cool. That's just the one thing I needed to know. So in the show, Nynaeve doesn't track them down until after. Doesn't track down the group until after they get out of Shadar Logoth.
Mhm.
But in the show, she actually. But I'm sorry, the show is after. But in the book, she actually catches up to them before they get caught. They get to Shadar Logoth, and when they're trying to escape from the Trollocs and Mashadar, they end up all getting separated. Moraine, Lan, and Nynaeve get separated together. Rand and Matt is another group, and Perrin and Egwene are another. Before they get separated, Moraine tells them all that the best way to escape the Trollocs at this very moment is to cross the river. I think it's the River Arendelle. Okay, so Shadar Logoth is set up like along one large river, and she tells them the best way we can escape these guys is to cross the river. We were going to do that at this village called Whitebridge, but whatever you do, try to find a way to cross. There are like certain narrow areas where you can cross. So, they all managed to escape Shadar Logoth. Matt and Rand, and alongside Tom Marilyn, they escaped the city and managed to get further down the river.
Mhm.
Before they encounter a small riverboat. Happens to be captained by a smuggler, but they were able to convince the guy, like, hey, we'll pay you. Can you like please take us down the river towards Whitebridge? And he's like, all right, sure. But then when he sees the Trollocs chasing them, he's like, all right, y'all need to explain. And they explained without telling too much. And he's like, all right, your gold's good. Let's go. Matt and I'm sorry, not Matt. So Matt, Rand, and Tom get on this boat and they head downriver towards Whitebridge. Egwene and Perrin, they both manage to cross the river, and they began making their way in a northeasterly direction. Because to them they say, "All right, well, we know everybody was going. We're going to head towards Tar Valon." But to get through, the best way through to like the most direct route to Tar Valon is through the capital of Andor, which is the country that they're currently in, which is the city of Caemlyn. So those two decide to try to make their way towards Caemlyn. Moraine and Moraine's group, Moraine reveals that she had actually placed a tracking ward on those coins that she gave to Rand, Matt, and Perrin.
Mhm.
And while she can sense Perrin's coin heading in a northeasterly direction, she realizes, okay, those two she realizes, all right, he was able to cross the river, so he should be safe. It's the two that are heading down river at this moment that I need to worry about. Because she could sense that two of the coins are heading down river. So she decides to follow that one. And even though Nynaeve is like, we should go after all of them, Moraine puts her foot down and tells her, like, Moraine has a way of like putting her foot down without yelling at you and without like, raising her voice. She just puts it in simple terms, like,
I'm not doing that.
We're not going to do that, and I'll tell you why. For one, the one who is heading northeast is as safe as they can be. That means they must have crossed the river. If they cross the river, the Trollocs can't get to them. It's the other two that we need to be worried about, because if they're going down river, that means that they're still on this side of the river,
Mhm.
which also means that there's still Trollocs chasing them.
Yeah.
So Nynaeve concedes the point and continues on. Those two groups head to a village called Whitebridge, and it's called that because Whitebridge is built around an ancient structure. The name is the dead giveaway. This ancient structure is a remnant from the Age of Legends. It was made out of some. It is literally a big bridge made out of a white. He doesn't when Rand first sees it. He's not sure how to describe the material. It's white, but it looks almost crystal-like, almost opaque, and he's not really sure what it's made of. But Tom tells him that it's a structure left over from the Age of Legends, and it's unbreakable. That's why it's still standing, even after many thousands of years. So the smuggler's boat docks in Whitebridge. They disembark and find shelter at one of the inns, but they don't stay long because they realize that a Myrddraal followed them into the village. Tom rushes the Myrddraal and tells Ren and Matt to make a run for it across the bridge, which they do. And while they don't see what happens to Tom, it's implied that the Myrddraal kills him. He's still alive, don't worry. But you won't see Tom again for another book until book 2. Honestly, Tom Maryland, he's just major side character. He's not really a big part of the story. I mean, he does travel with the main characters, whether he takes his turns. At one point he traveled, like I said, he traveled with Matt and Rand. For a short time he was traveling with Matt, Rand, and Perrin all together, and then another time it's Egwene and Nynaeve. And currently in book 6 he's with Egwene and he's not with Egwene, but he's with Nynaeve and another character that's going to be introduced in this book named Elaine. And Elaine is she becomes one of the main characters. So, but we'll get to her in just a second. We don't really see much from the perspective of Moraine's group, mainly because they're just following Matt and Rand.
Yeah.
So there's not much going on with them. Though their party does make it through Whitebridge, and after asking some questions, they get an idea that the two did flee across the bridge towards Camelin. But the villagers are being very sketchy and dodgy. Something happened, but they don't really want to acknowledge or talk about. It's at this point Moraine realizes that the two boys had given up the Tarvalon silver coins that she gave them, which annoyed the fuck out of her because she's like, great, now I can't track them. Because they use the Tarvalon marks to pay for their passage downriver. So Moraine is like, alright, time for plan B. And Nynaeve's like, what's plan B? Well, plan B is to just go ahead and track down the last coin, the last remaining coin, which is with Perrin. So, and Nynaeve's like, well, what about Matt and Rand? She's like, well, if they fled down this road, across the bridge, down that road, straight in that direction, they'll eventually get to Camelin. We'll just have to meet them there. We'll just have to catch them there. It's the other person. It's the one singular coin itself. She doesn't know. She doesn't know who it is yet. She's like, that one person by himself is now our biggest concern. And that's when we get to. That's what it goes more from the perspective of Perrin and Egwene. They're making their way. They're making their way in the northeasterly direction. They don't really know where they're going because they're not familiar with the land. They eventually encounter a sort of wild man named Elias. Elias is kind of an interesting character because aside from the true power, aside from the one power, there are other mystical abilities out there that are not associated with the true source. Some people, like there's one character that they met. I didn't really mention her because she just had like a small role in this book. Her name is Min. They meet her early on in a smaller city of Berlin. Her name is Min,
Mhm.
and she has the ability to see glimpses of the pattern, so she can see the future. But it's more of like not really like having a That's So Raven moment where she's all like,
Yeah.
yeah. It's more of like she looks at people and she sometimes either see like images or patterns or lights or like specks of light just appear around them. So that's like how her predictions work. And usually she's able to like Min is able to like get a good idea like what's going to happen. Like
Mhm.
some predictions that some images she sees around people are very obvious, like that guy's going to die. How do you know? Because I just saw an image of him with his throat slit.
Oh, that's
I don't
not
know what's going to
good.
happen, but I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to happen. When she first saw this motley crew like Rand, Perrin, Matt, Egwene, and Nynaeve, she was like, yeah, there's like something weird going on with those guys. I don't know what it is, but they're going to be very important people in the future.
Mm.
So, and Elias is something similar, but he is what is called a wolf brother. So he has the ability. So he's like basically like a druid, but he's able to telepathically communicate with wolves. And he himself has like wolf-like abilities, like heightened senses. His most defining feature is his eyes are bright yellow, like a bright gold. Um, when Perrin meets this guy, he begins to notice that he's starting to like. When Perrin meets this guy, he starts noticing that he's going through changes of his own,
Mhm.
and like he's also starting to notice that he can hear the thoughts of the wolves around them. So Perrin, yeah, just gonna say it, he's a wolf brother too.
Mhm.
And uh, Elias agrees to escort these two towards civilization. And at one point, their group encounters a group of traveling people called the Tinkerers, or the Tuathan. These guys are a group of nomadic pacifists. They follow a philosophy called the Way of the Leaf, which is extreme non-violence, non-aggression. So they will not they themselves will not act in violence, not even in any kind of violent way, not even to defend themselves. So they will not take up arms, they will not fight. They will not fight other people, and they will not fight back if they're being attacked.
Mm.
Yeah, so extreme pacifism right there. They travel with this group for a short time, but they eventually get separated from them because, one, the direction that the Tuathan are going and the direction that Perrin and Egwene need to go, two different things. So they separate, but it doesn't take long for Perrin and Egwene to. What the fuck is in my house? Oh, it's Joseph. Sorry.
Uh,
No, he's just talking really loud on his phone. Uh, anyway, Perrin and Egwene have a run-in with the Children of the Light, or the White Cloaks. I mentioned those guys earlier. They're basically the KKK,
oh.
except instead of instead of just extreme racism, it's they're witch hunters and they're dark friend hunters, which basically to them, dark friends and Aes Sedai are the same thing.
Mm.
And they capture Perrin and Egwene. They suspect Egwene is heading. They suspect that Egwene is heading north to become an Aes Sedai, but they can't prove it. But the thing is that they have way of they like to manipulate people too. Like, oh, you're not like if they suspect a woman of being a channeler, especially if they catch her heading north towards Tarvalon, right? They can't prove that she's going to Tarvalon, but they're like, you know what? These are bad areas. You know, we'll escort you to safety. We're gonna escort you to our regiment in Camelin, and then from there we'll escort you down to Amadisha. All right, where you'll be better civilization. All right, you can't get any better. Basically, their way of saying like we don't like we don't think you're a witch, but we're gonna make sure you don't go anywhere near them, right?
Are you one of them queers?
Something like that. Thing is, though, they decide that they're gonna execute Perrin when they get to their regiment in Camelin because, or they're not in Camelin. They're gonna pass through Camelin, but they're gonna take him down to their capital in Amadisha because when they capture the two, the White Cloaks chase them and pin them down. And the thing is, Perrin had befriended a couple of wolves, and the White Cloaks killed them. And Perrin, in anger, killed the White Cloaks. So White Cloaks was like, you killed a couple of our men in self-defense. You must be a dark friend. We're gonna execute you now.
We're gonna kill you.
So, but we're not gonna just kill you right here. We're gonna take you down and put you on trial, where you can defend yourself, and even if you have a good argument, we're still gonna condemn you as a dark friend and execute you.
Yeah.
And the thing is, by this point, the White Cloaks still end up taking them in the right direction, but about halfway there, that's when Moraine and her group catch up with them, and they realize, oh fuck, they're in a White Cloak camp. So they hatch a plan to break them out, and to do that, they're going to need 2 distractions and land. So, distraction number 1, Nynaeve is going to sneak into the camp and cut the ties of the tethers for the horses.
Mm-hmm.
So when the horses are all untethered, she's going to make sure that they're free, so that way they can run around. And then Moraine is going to call down a bolt of lightning and spook the animals, so they all run off. And then while the White Cloaks are busy trying to get their fucking horses back, Lan's gonna sneak into the camp, get Perrin and Egwene, and they're gonna make a break for it. And everything goes to plan. They all meet. They get the 2 of them out, and they finally get back on the road towards Camelin. At this point, there's Matt and Rand are pretty much had finally reached Camelin. They encountered some difficulties along the road north. They had to because they had little to no money, they weren't able to stay in any inns. They often had to either sleep in barns or under shrubs by the side of the road. There was a couple times where they encountered several rough patches. At one point, they tried to take shelter in a farm, and the farmer was going to let them stay there, but the guy got spooked because one of his daughters was eyeballing Rand, and that all 6'5" redheaded hunk of meat. And the farmer was like, "You eyeballing my daughter?" Rand's like, "No, she's doing that to me."
Oh,
well, I don't want you here, and he chases them out. Yeah, so one thing I should mention, Rand is a 6'5" red ginger.
Ginger. Hey.
Yeah. So he's a looker. We'll sit. He's a good-looking guy. Matt is described as being tall, slim, and he always seems to have a mischievous grin. Whenever he's always grinning, I don't know how to do a mischievous grin, but he always looks like he's described as looking like he's up to no good. And then Perrin is he's tall-ish, above average height. But he's built because he was a blacksmith's apprentice. He has a lot of muscle. His dark curly-ish hair, and he eventually grows a beard, but in this book he's just clean shaven. He did originally have dark eyes, but when when his wolf brother abilities awaken, his eyes turn gold.
Oh my.
Mm-hmm. And they're just like a wolf's eye, so like at night they reflect light. So they do that too. And at first he's very ashamed because he's like, I'm not normal anymore. Because like these guys, all three of these guys are like normal farm boys.
Yeah.
So they grew up in a very isolated community.
Of course.
So now that their lives were changing, they're having a hard time adjusting. Anyway, at one point, Ren and Matt get cornered by dark friends, like actual dark friends.
Yeah.
And the thing about dark friends is that they look like regular people. They hide themselves very well. And Balsamon, he directs the dark friends by entering their dreams. So Balsamon has been spreading the three boys' faces to his dark friend followers. So they all know who Rand, Matt, and Perrin look like, what they look like. And hell, all three of them, although they don't really tell Moraine, even though she tells them, if you're having any like weird dreams, you should tell me so I can help you out with that. And then they start having weird dreams and they're like, we shouldn't tell her. And when she actually finds out that they've been having these dreams, she's just all like, fucking say. So Balsamon has been haunting the boys' dreams. He pretty much shows them the same thing, but the thing is that he's taunting them like he knows them and showing them disturbing images. They keep having the same they keep finding themselves in the same scenario of this weird broken land. It's like they're in a castle and they keep entering this room where outside of the room they could see this weird inverted reality. And the way it's described, it's just it's very freaky. And Balsamon is like this dark figure with a fiery, flaming face. So several times, Matt and Rand get attacked while they're trying to make it to Camelin. And at one point, they were cornered by a group of dark friends, and they were cornered in a room. Like they had actually got caught and were locked in a room. And while the two of them were able to like break out of their bonds, they couldn't break out of the room. And they were trying to figure out a way to get out, and seemingly at random, while they were being threatened by the dark friends, a bolt of lightning strikes the building that they were in, because they were in an inn, and it blows a hole right through the wall.
Damn.
Because they were trying to like break out of one of the windows, but they see that like the dark friends had guards outside, and when the lightning bolt struck, it blew a hole through the wall, and it knocked out the dark friends, and the two were able to escape.
Damn.
And they're both like, huh, how about that?
Convenient.
And they make a run for it. But not long after they make their run for it, Rand begins to become sick. He begins having a fever, he's body aches and chills, and Matt is forced to carry him along, and at one point he manages to get a kind farmer to drive them in his wagon closer to the city, because at this point they're very close to Camelin. Rand's supposed illness goes away after about a day, which was strange because these kind of illnesses last for a few days, especially from what they've experienced. But they're like, that's weird. Rand is beginning to notice that Matt's behavior is becoming more erratic and more aggressive. and he does find out from Matt that Matt had taken the dagger from Shadar Logoth, and he doesn't really understand the implications of that. He's like, "Ooh, Moraine's gonna be mad, but you should be fine." He's not fine.
No, he's not.
His Matt's mental state is beginning to decline. He's becoming more aggressive and more paranoid. So much to the point when they finally do reach Camelin, and they along the way, Matt was able to earn them some money through gambling. So when they get to Camelin, they were able to pay for their rooms and stay in someplace nice. Because the thing is that Camelin is currently filling to the brim with travelers, because along their journey, they began hearing rumors about a false dragon. False dragons are male channelers who believe that they are who will declare themselves the Dragon Reborn. And the thing is that, like I said, the taint on Sidon is still there, even after 3,000 years. And anytime a male channeler appears, they'll slowly begin to go mad. Now, and if the Red Aja doesn't capture them and gentle them, they'll continue to go on a rampage and kill everything around them before they'll eventually die, because the thing is that the taint not only causes their mental state to deteriorate, but it'll also cause their bodies to deteriorate too, to the point where they'll just waste away and die. But it takes years for that to happen, and by that point they could just they'll be killing anything and everything around them. So this particular false dragon was a man named Logain, and they had heard rumors that the Aes Sedai had managed to corner Logain and capture him, and they're currently making their way to Tar Valon. And the thing is that Tar Valon has a very close relationship to Andor and the Queen and its Queen. So every time they capture a male channeler, they have this miles-long procession that will take them through Camelin, where the Aes Sedai will present the false dragon to the Queen of Andor, and then from there they take this man north to Tar Valon, where he is put on a trial by the Aes Sedai. And usually there's 13 Aes Sedai who do this, and they come together and they will gentle him. It's the gentling, even though most channelers consider it a fate worse than death. It's the more humane thing to do when dealing with a male channeler. Instead of just outright murdering him, they just take away his power. He'll be able to live out the rest of his life with whatever sanity he has left. But thing is, like I said, it's like an addiction that doesn't go away even if you're cut off cold turkey. And most people who have been severed, most channelers that have been severed, will usually either lose their will to live or they will take their own lives. And ladies and gentlemen, we are joined today with Patricia.
Fucking cat scared the shit out of me. I was like,
Yeah, Shelly did the same thing to me yesterday, or the last time we were recording.
yeah. My God.
Yeah. Anyway, so Camelin is currently filled to the brim with a bunch of onlookers and gawkers, because the procession is just about to come through the city. The Aes Sedai are going to present Logain to the Queen before taking him to Tar Valon. They still manage to get rooms at an inn, and Matt, due to his mental state, he isolates himself. He hides himself in their rooms, refuses to come out. He's like muttering to himself and like looking at everybody with suspicion, like they're trying to take right. Yeah, but Rand, knowing that the procession is about to come through. He wants to see it himself,
Mm-hmm.
and he does manage to get a good spot to see the procession come through. But while he's there, he notices that there's this vagabond, this like really crusty looking man, like staring at him. And when the man realizes like when Rand looks at the man like becomes violent and charges straight at Rand and chases him throughout the city. And Rand does manage to lose this guy, but he's like, oh fuck, now I can't see the procession. But he ended up in a spot somewhere in the inner city near the inner palace.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, all right. He looks around and he finds like there's a place that he can climb up. And when he climbs up, he's able to see the procession, if not from a distance. And he does see Logain from afar. And what he sees is like, yeah, the procession. There's a procession of warders escorting a group of like about a dozen Aes Sedai, and they're pulling a wagon with a cage on it, and on the cage itself has like set on a platform type wagon, and so he can see Logain in the cage, but on the platform surrounding him there are 4 Aes Sedai just kind of squatting there at each corner of the cage, and they're just keeping their focus on him.
Mm-hmm.
So what the Aes Sedai are doing, they're shielding him. So channelers can temporarily shield another channeler from the source. It's not permanent. Depending on how powerful an individual is, you would probably need more than just one Aes Sedai just to like keep him contained.
Mm-hmm.
So with Logain, he needed like 4 channelers to maintain a shield just to keep him from channeling.
Yeah.
So typically, 4 is like the bare minimum, but to comfortably shield him, you need at least 6 Aes Sedai to shield him. Yeah. But while he's trying to watch the procession, Rand ends up slipping off his perch and he falls off. He falls inside of the royal gardens of the palace, and he's found by the prince and princess of Camelin, the princess and heir apparent Elaine Trakan, and her brother Gawain, the prince. The first prince, Gawain Trakan. So this is the cool thing about a lot of the cultures in the Wheel of Time is that a lot of them are matriarchal. So it's not Queen Morghese and all the queens of Andor, they only ever have queens. They don't have kings. And even in Eamon's Field, the people of Eamon's Field and Two Rivers is governed by local groups of women's circle. So like, yeah, there's a council for the men. Then they do make a lot of important decisions, but it's the women that have the women's circle that have the final say in matters of like marriage, certain like specific laws, and other things that are meant to happen. Real quick, it's starting to get dark on my end.
The lights.
Anyway, he meets the 2 of them, but he also unfortunately meets their older brother, a guy named Galad Damodred. And the thing is that Elaine and Gawain, they understood that Rand, it was by accident. Rand didn't purposely enter the gardens. He just he explained to them that he was just trying to see the procession of Logain, and he just fell in by accident. And they believed him. But the thing is, Galad, the way Galad is described as a character, because he does appear several times throughout the series, he's not a malicious person, and he's not like a self-centered or stuck-up kind of prince or royalty. The thing is, he will always do the right thing to a fault, even if it means like getting himself in trouble. So if he does something wrong, he's like, ah, shit. And then he'll go up and immediately tell on himself. But if anyone else does something wrong, no matter how big or small, he's basically like an overgrown tattletale.
Rude.
Yeah, so Elaine and Gowan help Rand, and they're like, all right, let's get you out of here before anybody notices. And then they turn around, and there's Galad, and Galad's like, what you got there?
What's good?
Nothing.
Look like
Is
you're
that a
doing
peasant in our garden?
something.
And they try to convince him not to tell anybody, or like just to leave him alone. And he's like, all right, fine. And he walks away, and they're like, fuck, he's gonna tell the guard.
He's gonna tell somebody.
All right, well, he's gonna tell somebody, and he does. The guards show up, and they arrest Rand.
Rude
And
ass.
the thing is, Elaine sticks up for him, and tells him that, listen, he's our guest. He's not doing anything wrong. And they're like, well, the queen will decide that. So they turn to the queen, and he's just over here like, and Rand's over here like,
Let me go up to the highest person in the land, see if she cares.
I'm in danger. He's like, I'm in danger.
She's gonna fucking kill me.
Oh no.
I've literally done nothing.
So they do take him before the queen, and the queen does chastise Elaine and Gowan a bit, but after talking to Rand, he tells her the same story. Like, listen, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to trespass. I was just trying to get a good spot to see Logain, and I fell in, and I mean you or anybody any harm. And she sees that the queen, Queen Morghese, is described as being very fiery and quick-tempered, but she's just over here like, I can tell you weren't trying to trespass. I'll let you go. But the thing is that the queens of Andor, because of their close relationship to Tar Valon, they always have an Aes Sedai advisor, and the Aes Sedai advisor with the queen is a woman named Eleda, and Eleda happens to be a part of the Red Aja. Now, Eleda, she does have a somewhat of an ability to see glimpses of the pattern. It's nothing like what men can do, but she does see, like, she'll sometimes see flashes or auras surrounding certain people, and she'll know, and she'll know if there's something significant about them. And when she sees Rand, she immediately tells the queen that something is interesting about this young man. I don't know what it is.
I can't quite put my finger on it.
But I don't think you should be careful, Your Majesty. I think some trouble could come from him. And the queen's like, well, he hasn't committed a crime. He hasn't committed any real crimes. And honestly, like, the whole situation with Logain, there are plenty of curious onlookers out there, and he just happened to make a foolish mistake. I'm not going to do anything. You're free to go. So they escort him out of the palace. He returns to his inn, and it's at this point that Moraine finally pounces on him, because she's all like, I found you, you bitch! Ha! I found you! Because the thing is, when even though he and Matt no longer have the coins she gave him, when they entered, when her group enters Camelin, she says that she'll be able to track him down, because I think besides the coins, she's able, like, using the source, she's able to track people. So she does eventually track the two of them down, and she finds them. She's like, all right, cool. Well, I'm glad we found you. I'll make sure we'll get things settled with the innkeeper, and we should start getting back on the road towards Tar Valon. I should also mention that in the days that Rand and Matt were staying in Camelin, because they had been in Camelin for a few days already, Rand actually meets an interesting character who's also staying at the inn that him and Matt are staying at. And this character is named Loyal. Loyal is an Ogier. And in the Wheel of Time, there are other non-human there are other sentient non-human characters.
Mm.
Mainly, there's not many. If anything, most of them went extinct due to the age, because of the War of Power and the Age of Madness.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another humanoid species called Ogier. And the Ogier, they are these tall, like, I don't want to say orc-like because they're not ugly or, I mean, they're kind of ugly, but they're tall. They're very like bulky-looking creatures.
Mm-hmm.
They're humanoid, but the biggest difference is that they have broad faces, like with kind of like flat bridge noses, and they have these long pointed ears with tufts sticking out of them. So I'm gonna just post a picture for you for all of our listeners and viewers. If you want to know what an Ogier looks like, just go ahead and there we go. If you were paying attention in the show, Loyal does appear in the show, but the way he looks like compared to he looks like in the book is very different.
Where'd you send it
So
to?
the picture, I haven't sent it yet.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Continue.
All right. So this
okay.
picture I just sent, this is a picture, artist rendition of Loyal. He's described to being over 9 feet tall, and like whenever he's see, like Ogier are naturally bigger than humans. So but the thing is, the Ogier, they tend to keep to themselves in their own societies. In fact, the Ogier live in places called steadings. The thing about steadings is steadings are places where people can't channel. So for whatever reason, when you enter a steading, if you're a channeler, your ability to channel just turns off. It's not permanent, but for whatever reason, you're not able to channel when you're in a steading. Now, that's why, and steadings, while like normal people aren't affected by them, Ogier find themselves to be more at home in steadings. In fact, it's like they physically need to stay, like it's considered hazardous for them to leave their settings for long periods of time, because they eventually begin to develop this condition called belonging, and which makes them really just crave to be back in a steading. Because if they're outside of a steading for too long, they begin to deteriorate and waste away. But Loyal, he decided to leave his homesteading to travel the world so that way he can, because he wants to learn. He wants to see the world. He wants to learn how things have changed. Because the thing about Ogier is that Ogier are a naturally long-lived race. They can live for an upwards of like 900 to 1,000 years. And because of their slower age rate, they don't really change much or really like approach life at a very fast pace. So when Loyal first left his steading, for one thing, Loyal is about 90 years old, but for an Ogier, he's about the same age as like Rand. So in human years, he would be like 20 years old. Or I'm sorry. So like human years, he's 90. Ogier years, he's like about 20. So he's still considered very young. And he tells Rand that like among his people, it's not really normal for Ogier to leave their steading very young. But with him, he just really wanted to see the world and learn. Technically, he ran away. So yeah, Rand befriends an Ogier. Matt's mental state is declining. Moraine shows up, tells him, "All right, let's get the fuck out of here." And he's like, wait, what about Matt? Something's up with Matt. You should probably go check up on him. She's like, okay, what do you do now? So she goes upstairs, goes to the room, takes one look at Matt, and she's like, okay, y'all need to back up. Everybody needs to like step away, because when they all entered the room, Egwene and Nynaeve immediately went up to Matt to check up on him, because Nynaeve, being the wisdom, she's like, immediately taking up her role as the healer. She's checking him. He's feverish. He's like gibbering mess. But when Moraine looks at him, she's like, "You need to. Okay, I'm gonna need you two to step away from him right now. He's very dangerous." And she's like, and they're all like, "Why?" He's like, "You took something from Shadar Logoth, didn't you?" So Moraine ends up having. So she tells everyone to leave the room, and we don't exactly see what happens. But if you watch the show, Moraine basically pins Matt down and takes the dagger from him, and she heals him. She basically pulls out the corruption that the dagger was infecting him with, and cleanses him of it.
Yep.
In the show, it implies that the dagger doesn't, like, he's good and it's settled. Like, he's not affected by it anymore. The thing is that because he had the dagger on him for so long, the dagger had tied itself to him. So Moraine was able to heal him and restore him to a more or less normal state, but the dagger is still connected to him, and trying to separate him from it would be detrimental to his health. So she was able to push the darkness back, but she tells them that, yes, if we're going to separate him and unbind him from the dagger, we're going to need a full team of sisters, of Aes Sedai sisters, to
do it. Separate
him from the dagger. Yeah. She's like, all right, well, we should get going. It's a Loyal at this point had noted to Rand, after like hearing about what's happened to him so far, especially, and also to Matt and Perrin. He's like, huh, I've never seen one in person, but you're a Tavaren. And Rand's like, what's a Tavaren? So Tavaren are people who don't flow in the direction that the pattern weaves them. Instead, they affect the pattern instead of the pattern affecting them.
Mm-hmm.
So, depending on how powerful a Tavaren is, they can cause random acts of change and just weird things to happen. So, whereas like the pattern affects you as a person and directs your course in life, a Tavaren does the opposite. They affect and change the pattern. And from what Loyal, just from observing Rand and his friends, it's like, you three are Tavaren. I've never heard of there being three at one time. And Moraine, like, she's surprised she's surprised and she's not surprised that that Ogier would know this, but at the same time she's like, thanks for telling him that, you dick. She's kind of annoyed that he like spilled the beans on that, because she suspected the same thing too. But either way, Moraine tells them that they need to get going. But Loyal points out something that the boys had mentioned, because at this point, like, Moraine's pissed at Matt and Rand, and a bit at Perrin too, because at this point she knows that they're hiding stuff from her, especially like with the whole dagger thing. And she's like, what else have you been hiding from me?
Oh,
I can't help you I can't help you unless you tell me. Okay, I'm not your enemy. I'm trying to protect you. And they properly chastised, they mention that they've been having these strange dreams with a dark figure calling himself Balzaman. And she's like, how long have you been having these dreams? Since we left Emmonsfield? Since you left Emmonsfield. Alright. She's still trying to figure out, like, as she's pressing them to like tell her what they've been seeing, one thing that they all describe is that they begin seeing this strange pool, like a strange area with a pool of water. They don't know what it is, but there's weird imagery and symbology and all that concerning their common dream. And when Loyal hears this, he's like, Moraine Sedai, that is the Eye of the World. And they're like, what's the Eye of the World? The Eye of the World is this pool of Sidon that is the resting place of one of the seals on the Dark One's prison. And Loyal tells Moraine, if this is what the Dark One is showing them, then it's highly likely that the Dark One is going to try to destroy the Eye of the World. And try to either maybe get his hands on one of the seals and possibly try to break it. And Moraine is like, okay, change the plans. We're heading to Shianar. Shianar is a country that is a borderland country. It's called a border. It's called one of the. It's a part of the Borderlands. The Borderlands is an area that is set along the territory that is controlled by the Dark One and his forces. This territory that is controlled by the Dark One is called the Blight. It's called that because there is a growth of just death and decay in that area. So any living thing begins to rot and decay, and like animals begin to mutate and change in that area or just die out entirely. The Blight is infested with all manners of creatures, from Trollocs, Myrddraal, Drakkar, and even other like nasty creatures. Drakkar are these man-bat creatures that are kind of like sirens. So if they start singing, which is like really just incoherent screeching, they hypnotize you, and this is how they hunt, because once they get you under their spell, they will grab you and they will suck out your soul. And they do have an encounter with one, but quickly dealt with.
Hi. Yeah.
Hello.
What up? Okay.
I promise we're almost to the end.
No,
There's
you're
just
fine.
a lot.
No, you're fine. I'm in no rush. I mean, as long as I get done before 8. By 8.
Okay, well, we should be done soon. Okay, so we're like in the last quarter of the book. I promise.
Okay.
I'll try to go by it faster, not
No,
segue too much.
You are fine.
All right. So, Moraine, after hearing counsel from Loyal about the Eye of the World, she decides that their whole band, including Loyal, need to head to the Eye of the World, which is currently located in the Blight. And the team is like, wait, hold up, how are we supposed to get there in time? It's hundreds of miles away. And she's like, we're going to take the ways, and you, Loyal, are going to guide us through the ways. And Loyal's like, oh no, not the ways, anything but the ways. What are the ways, you may ask? So during the Age of Madness, some of the male channelers took shelter in steadings. Because since the steadings block your ability to channel, it gave the channelers, these men, a certain level of protection from the taint. So it kept them from channeling, so they couldn't draw the taint into themselves. The thing is, these men ended up, in the end, did end up leaving the steadings. They took. Ew, gross. Not on camera. Ugh.
I can kiss my boyfriend. I can do it.
Yeah. Anyway, so the thing is that these male channelers, they didn't stay in the steadings for very long because channeling is addictive. And even though they got some protection from the taint while in the steadings, they eventually left the steadings over time because they They just can't live without the source.
Mm-hmm.
But as a thanks to the Ogier who sheltered them in their steadings, these male channelers created these systems of portals called waygates. Now these waygates are not only powered by the source, but they can grow too. So what they did was they created like a seed, like a special kind of waygate seed that they gave to the Ogier. They did this so that way the Ogier will have a safe way of traveling between steadings, because their steadings are like little pockets that are hundreds of miles away from each other. So Ogier can't really, like, in order for an Ogier to travel from one setting to another, they would have to like leave their setting and travel for months. And it can be dangerous because men, especially after the Age of Madness, began to fear and mistrust Ogier. So the male channelers, they created this artifact for the Ogier, so that way they can plant outside of their steadings. So they can just simply, if they want to go from one setting to another, they can just take a waygate. Now, the waygates, because they were created using the male half of the source, over time began to become tainted themselves. So at first, when the Ogier started planting the waygates, the waygates don't open and just instantaneously take you from point A to point B. No, when you enter it, you enter this like space, and well, I guess when it was first created, the Ogier had to like build like these roads inside this space because it's just empty, right? And they did this, and they've created a vast a complex system of travel, right? So you would enter through one waygate, you travel along these paths that the Ogier built, and it could take several days. It could take several days to get from one waygate to another through the ways, but several days through the ways just saved you months of travel, right? But over time, the waygates began to become corrupted, and like at first, when they were first created, it was basically like an empty space of like, it was just like white light. And of course the roads that the Ogier built through it so they could travel safely. But over time, it began to become enveloped in darkness. And from this darkness, a entity was born, similar to Mashadar. The Ogier call it Makin Sin, or Makin Shin, or Machin Shin. I don't know how to pronounce it. Makin Shin, or the Black Wind. The Black Wind is like this parasitic organism that was born from the taint on Sidon. And while it doesn't envelop all of the ways, it's this entity that will travel throughout the ways. And if it catches you, it kills you.
And
So eventually, the Ogier were forced to abandon the ways because they couldn't travel safely through it. But problem is, because they built it, like the roads inside the ways have these markers with directions on which way to go. Like, okay, you need to get to, like, you want to go to Benethrin, go that way. Or if you want to go to Shianar, you go that way. And, well, Moraine doesn't read Ogier script. Well, who better to read Ogier scripts than an Ogier? And at first, Loyal is reluctant, but he agrees to go with them because he's got a book to write. What better way to write a book than to travel with 3 Ta'veren and an Aes Sedai?
Yeah.
So he tells them that there is a waygate in Camelin because there used to be an Ogier Grove in Camelin. It's not a steading, but the way that Ogier began to like rebuild their relationship with the nations after the breaking of the world was they took up stoneworking, and their work was actually really intricate and very sturdy. So they ended up building like old cities for a lot of nations. And when they built these cities, they planted these groves because Ogier, they love trees and they love nature. So whenever they would stay in these sittings, they built these groves so that way they can have like a little piece of home. But Canelin's Grove was cut down a long time ago and built over by the newer city outside of the old Gear city. But where the Waygate in Camelin was, it was in a basement of like somewhere in the newer city. So he leads them to the Waygate. Moraine shows them how to open the Waygate, and in the book, the way Waygates look from the Waygates in the show are very different. In the show, they look like these two pillars on a platform, and she has to use the source. She has to use the source to open the Waygate. But in the book, they look like a pair of stone doors set into a wall or into like a hill. And the way you open it, it's not through using the source, but by going up to the door. And carved onto the Waygate door itself is an image of a tree called an Evendosora. The Evendosora is the tree of life, right? And in order to open it, you have to pluck a specific leaf, because there's a bunch of different leaves, like carvings of leaves on the tree, but only one leaf is the true trifoil leaf of the Evendosora. So it's like a three-pointed leaf. And when you pluck the leaf off, the Waygate kind of comes alive, because like the way it looks, the way the tree is carved on the door, it looks very lifelike. But when you pluck the leaf off, it looks like it actually comes to life, and then the doors will open. And then when you want to close the door, you just when you want to close the Waygate, you just put the leaf back onto the door, and it will start closing, but slowly. So like when you enter it, everyone walks through. They kind of go through this, like, it's kind of like this mirror-like substance, or like this field. And when they go through it, they describe it as like they're like walking through something, like not like a viscous liquid, but it's like they feel themselves going slower. And then once they do that, they come out on the other side, and they are in the ways, and it's dark. They can see the path that the Ogier built, and it's old and it's unkempt, but it's still solid. Once everyone's in, Moraine puts the leaf back on the door, and it starts closing, and she comes right through. Now, in the show, when they all enter the ways, Matt stays behind and doesn't go with them, but in the book, he does go with them. So there's a big difference there. I gotta say though, Matt is one of my least favorite characters. His personality overall is just like such a dick. But I won't get into that. Not this, at least not in this episode. So they spend the next several days traveling through the ways. Loyal has to be the one to guide them. So they follow the path, and then they reach like kind of like an island-like structure with a guiding stone,
of course,
in the center. And on it is inscribed with directions, like, okay, like which way you need to go for which Waygate. And so he reads it. It's like, all right, Shinar, this way. So this is how they spend the next few days. As they get closer to Shinar, like the last day that they are of their journey through the ways, they come across a keystone that has been vandalized. Like there's cuts and grooves all over it. It's been completely defaced. And they also come across corpses of Trollocs. And when they see the Trollocs, Moraine's like, so that's how they got to the Two Rivers. So that's how they got to the Two Rivers undetected. The Trollocs are using the ways. And Loyal confirms that there was a Waygate in Manetheren, which is where the Two Rivers is. So when they find this, they do come across some Trollocs, and they are forced to run towards the Waygate, to their intended Waygate. When they get to the Waygate, however, they realize that the trifoil leaf that they need to pull off to open the gate is gone.
Uh-oh.
meaning that you, sir, I heard that.
What?
Did you fart?
No, I said, uh-oh.
Oh, I heard like a noise. Sound like a fart.
No.
Well, I heard you say uh-oh before.
It was.
I heard you say uh-oh, but like before that I heard a sound and it sounded like a fart. And I'm like, fart? During our live pre-recorded session?
No, it was not a fart. My roommate is screaming at the TV because he's playing Elden Ring. So you probably heard that. A fart.
Yeah.
What do you think I am? A degenerate? A heathen? Yes.
You are a self-proclaimed heathen. Self-proclaimed.
It's so only okay when I say it.
Yeah, sure. Anyway, so when they reach their exit gate, they realize that the leaf to unlock the gate is gone.
Uh-oh.
So Moraine, and while they were running from the Trollocs, they also realized that they can hear something else. It's like a strange kind of like almost like wind.
Girl,
like a
run.
Rushing sound.
Girl, run.
And it's also they can also hear something like in the distance, like voices. And Loyal recognizes it, and he's like,
"Let's wrap it up.
It's a black wind. It's a black wind.
Let's
run.
Wrap it up."
So, yep. So they run to the gate. They can't unlock it. So Moraine, she made it clear that, especially to Egwene and Nynaeve, who both demonstrated their abilities to channel, especially Nynaeve, because Nynaeve, as it turns out, is the most powerful female channeler of their age. Because like there hasn't been anybody as powerful as her in centuries. And Moraine is like, huh. When she realized that, like she's like, huh. Well, I'm not letting you go home now. You're going to Tarvalon, bitch.
Ooh.
So, anyway, she tells them, don't channel, because in the ways, since the ways were created by Sidon, the taint is very much present here, and it could affect you negatively if you channel while you're in here. Even though they're using Sidar, which is untouched by the taint, they're still going to be affected by it. So Moraine breaks her own rule. She's like, okay, fuck it. She levels her staff and she blows and she shoots out a white hot jet of flame at the door, and she melts right through it. So the thing is, the way gates can't be destroyed. They can be damaged, but they can't be destroyed. And they make it through she melts the gate open. They're able to run through it and escape the black wind. When they look back at the gate, it's still open because it was damaged by Moraine, but they can see that the silvery mirror surface that they came through has turned completely black, and that's because the black wind chased them up to the gateway, but it can't go through it.
Yeah, it's like right there.
They're just like, huh.
That's scurry.
It's scurry. So, from there, they make their way to Shianar, to Faldara, the capital city of Shianar. They inform the Shinarian Lord, Lord Engelmar, that of why they are there. The thing about the Borderlands is that they are, unlike the rest of the nations down south, they actually trust and revere the Aes Sedai. I mean, well, they still have like a certain level of reverence for them. They don't really view them as like witches. If anything, they see things more plainly. They're like, the Aes Sedai are our biggest support are basically the ones who are doing the most to fight the to fight the dark and prepare for Tamar Gaiden.
Yeah.
Think about the Borderland nations is that they're also a very warlike society. They form very warlike societies, so war is part of their culture. So the Shannarians are like all the men are soldiers. Most, if not all, the men are soldiers. The women are, while they may not take active roles as soldiers, they do know how to defend themselves. But their role is mostly like domestic defense, in case the Trolloc forces come too far south.
Mm-hmm.
And really, that's what the role of the Borderlands are: is to make sure the Trollocs don't go any further south, and also to try to fight the keep the Blight from getting further.
Mm-hmm.
Engelmar, he gives them supplies and sets them up, and while he tries to convince them to let them take a force of soldiers into the Blight with them to the Eye of the World, Moraine tells them they would have a greater chance of success if they went into the Blight with just a small team, which is basically their group, their small group. But Engelmar agrees, but he received a report that there's a massive gathering of Trollocs that are going to be coming through this huge gap. So Engelmar is like, all right, well, at least allow us to escort you as far as the Blight, and then from there we will let you be while we go take care of engage the Trolloc forces. They agree. They go north, and they eventually separate from the Shannarians. The Shannarians head to fight the Trollocs, while Moraine and her group enter the Blight. While they're in the Blight, they see in the distance, as they travel deeper into the Blight, they see in the distance these towers that are completely covered by the decay. And upon questioning it, Moraine reveals that those are the 7 towers of Malkir.
Ooh.
Malkir was another Borderland nation that unfortunately was enveloped by the Blight. It fell to the Blight, and most, if not all, of the Malkirian citizens died, including the nobility and the kings and the former leaders of the city, except one.
Oh.
Alan Mandragoran.
Uh-huh.
So when he was just a baby, Lan was taken from Malkir before it fell, and he was raised in the south. And his early life was chaotic, and he didn't have much to live for because he was a king without a throne and a nation. But eventually, Lan was found by Moraine, and she convinces him to become her warder. And ever since then, Lan has served her faithfully. Being a warder gives him a purpose, and it's noble, it's honorable. So they make their way further into the Blight. They do encounter Trollocs and other nasty critters that inhabit the Blight, but they eventually reach the Eye of the World. And the Eye of the World is actually is located in a little grove that is protected from the Blight. And they also meet, real quick, let me get his name.
Isn't it a Forsaken?
Nope. That comes later. Let's see. They reach the Eye of the World, and they meet the Green Man.
Oh, the Green Man.
The Green Man.
Yeah.
Yep, the Green Man is a good guy. Okay. Hold on. So the Green Man is, his name is Someshta. He is a living. He's a living tree, plant man. I think. Fuck. What were they called? Hold on. He's from a race of people called. He's from a race of people called the Nim. The Nim, unfortunately, have gone extinct that we know of. They've become mostly extinct, and it is believed that Somesha is the last of his kind. And he was set by the ancient Aes Sedai to protect the Eye of the World, which is a pool of Sidon. He reveals the eye to them. Moraine explains to the group that the water that's inside the eye is not water, but essence of Sidon. So it is pure, concentrated energy from the male half of the true source, and it's untainted. And she kind of lets slip that it's believed that it's believed that the Eye of the World will be used by the Dragon Reborn to either save the world or destroy it. It all depends, because the prophecies concerning the Dragon Reborn, which the Dragon Reborn and the dragon himself have been mentioned kind of like offhandedly throughout the book, but it was never really hinted or implied that it would be one of the three boys. Right? They don't really understand. They don't really realize their connection to this.
Yeah.
So they view the eye and they're like, all right, let's begin planning let's try to think. Let's try to figure out what the Dark One is going to try to do. Because they believe that the Dark One is going to try to taint the Eye of the World. Right? To corrupt it. So that way, when the Dragon Reborn finally comes and uses it, the taint will lead him down the path of darkness, right? Or something like that. So the Eye of the World is inside of like a cavern, like a cave. So it's underground. So when they come out, when they exit the cavern, they find that the grove is no longer. They are not the only ones in the grove anymore. They are confronted by two mysterious figures. One looks like a really decrepit old man. We're talking like a fossil. Old and crusty. The other one is some creepy dude in like, think Pinhead from Hellraiser, except without all the pins, but he's wearing like a weird mask with like a creepy looking smile on it. When they're confronted by these men, these guys tell them that they're here to take the Eye of the World, right? And Moraine, she stands up to these two. She's all like, and she like basically shouts them down. Like this is the first time we actually see her like Moraine actually like kind of lose her composure. Like she's not like screeching like wild-eyed like, who the hell are you? She's just like firmly like commanding them, tell me who you are.
Yeah.
Right? The decrepit old man introduces himself. He is Agenor. And his companion, who's long lost his ability to speak, is Balthamel. And they are two of the Forsaken.
Bum bum bum.
So Agenor and Balthamel do not appear in the show. In the show, it's just Rand and Moraine who head to the Eye of the World, quote unquote Eye of the World. They don't actually call it that. Do they call it that in the show? I literally just watched it.
I don't remember.
Do you remember?
I don't remember.
I don't think they do. They call it the Dark One's prison.
Yeah,
that's what they call it.
Oh, the Dark One's prison. Yeah,
and their confrontation is with the Dark One, right? And he puts Rand into this like dream state where Rand he's trying to convince Rand to join the dark side, but Rand refuses. And Moraine had given him in the show. She gave him this little statue, and she calls it a Sa'angreal. And this was made and imbued with the power of over like 1,000 male channelers. And she said it should be enough to vanquish the Dark One. And he uses it and releases its power, and it does vanquish the Dark One. And it also breaks the seal that he was standing on. But here's the thing. That's not what happens in the book. For one thing, it's not the Dark One they confront.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to tell you right now, it's not the Dark One they confront in both the show and the book.
Mm.
So, so here's what happens in the book. Agenor is one of the Forsaken, and he brags that his power was on the same level as Lews Therin Talamon, the original dragon. And the thing about Lews Therin Talamon was that he was the most powerful male channeler, or rather, he was as powerful as a male channeler can be with the Source. So, like, physiologically speaking, there is a limit to how powerful a man or a woman can be in the Source.
Mm.
So, like, once they reach that level, there's a certain level that they can reach, and they can't that they won't be able to pass. All right. Now, it's really your power level is really hereditary.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you were born, you're basically born able to channel more power than other people. So, like, it's just naturally how much you can that you can channel, but there is a limit at how powerful any channeler can be, and Luz was at the very zenith of it. And Lews Therin was at the zenith,
Mm-hmm.
and Agenor was on the same level, supposedly. Fun fact about Agenor, he created the Halfmen. He was the one who created the Trollocs, the Myrddraal, the Drakkar, and all the other nasties that fought on the Dark One's side. And Balthamel, there wasn't really much to say about Balthamel, other than he just doesn't talk. He wears that creepy mask, and he's supposed to be very sadistic.
Mm-hmm.
But when the Forsaken proclaim themselves, the Green Man attacks them, and so does Moraine. The Green Man attacks Balthamel, and the two of them end up killing each other. Like, Balthamel strikes down the Green Man, but the Green Man, in his dying, with his dying breath, causes a tree to grow and encase Balthamel, killing him apparently. So he's dead as far as we know. And Moraine attacks Agenor, and she creates this massive pillar of fire that shoots out of the ground and engulfs Agenor.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't do shit to him. He's just standing there. He stands there in that pillar of flame, and he's just like, and Moraine tells everyone else to run. So everyone scatters, but for some reason, Agenor chases Ren. So, Ren, he runs to the edge of the grove, and he's kind of cornered in at the edge of a cliff. And he turns around and he finds Agenor had followed him. And Agenor, the way he's talking to Rand is almost like Agenor knows who Rand is, but it's like he's addressing Rand differently, like it's like he's somebody else. And as he's talking, Agenor mentions that he and Balthamel, when they were sealed, they were basically at the very edge of the seal. So while they were caught in the dreamless sleep, they were still affected by the flow of time. So the both of them basically ended up aging and becoming decrepit and old looking, but since they were given immortality by the Dark One, they couldn't die.
Mm-hmm. So
as Ren was watching him, Agenor's face was beginning to smooth out and become less decrepit and more youthful. And something clicks in Rand. He starts realizing that certain events that have happened in his journey which he wasn't able to explain, are now making sense. He starts realizing that he can feel something kind of at the edge of his vision, like a source of light. Right? He can't see it, but he knows it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And he reaches for it. And when he reaches for it, he notices behind Agenor a stream of white like a thread of white energy comes flowing towards him from somewhere in the forest. And when Agenor sees it, he freaks out and he's like, "No, that's mine!" But Rand seizes that thread of energy, and he throws it at Agenor. And when he does that, there's a flash of light, and Rand finds himself back in that dreamscape that Balsamon had been drawing him in every night. And Balsamon does his usual shit of mocking Rand and saying, "You'll never win. We've been doing this for cycles, countless cycles. All right, but we're gonna break the cycle this time." Blah, you know, cue villainous yeah. And Rand's like, "No." He's like, And he notices that surrounding him and Balsamon are these threads of energy. The one surrounding him is thinner and is glowing with this pure white energy, while Balsamon is wrapped in this thread of like black energy, and both strands are like stretching off into the distance to like somewhere unseen. And Matt, seeing the black thread connecting surrounding Balsamon, he gets his idea and he holds out his hands, and a glimmering white sword appears in his hand. It's like crystal clear, and like it looks like it's made out of a crystal. And he uses the blade and he cuts through the black thread around Balsamon, disrupting his power and cutting his connection to Rand. So Rand finds himself in another place now. This time he's in the battlefield where the Shinarians are fighting the Trollocs, and the Shinarians are vastly outnumbered by the thousands of Trollocs. And Rand, continuing to draw on this energy, like releases a wave of energy, lightning strikes the ground, and he obliterates the Trolloc forces. After this, he loses consciousness for a bit, and then when he wakes up, he's back on that cliffside where he was confronted by Agenor. And when he looks at where Agenor was standing, there's nothing. Agenor, like just a little pile of ash.
Jesus.
And it becomes clear to Rand that he's a channeler. So he can use the true source. He can touch the true source. And he's scared, but he doesn't tell anybody. He decides not to tell anybody. Well, he does tell some people. He ends up telling his friends.
Yeah.
But not until much later. And he goes back to the clearing where the entrance to the eye was, and he finds Lan and Moraine. Moraine is still alive, but she looks like shit because Agenor basically bent her over his knee and whooped her ass.
Damn.
And but for him, like the way Agenor, like you don't actually see their confrontation, but the way Agenor manhandled Moraine was basically like swatting a fly.
Yeah.
And his friends were still there. They managed to flee to safety. Balthamel is dead, and unfortunately, so is the Green Man. But taking stock of their surroundings, they go back into the cavern with the eye, and they find that the pool of Sidon is gone. It vanished. And basically what happened was that Rand had pulled the power from the Eye of the World, and that's what he used to strike down Agenor, to give Balsamon the boot, and also wipe out the Trolloc forces. They go into but they find that the pool had actually contained several artifacts. First and foremost, they find a box, big ivory box that when Moraine identifies as some form of capsule that was left over from the Age of Legends, and she triggers the mechanism and it opens and it reveals an artifact known as the Horn of Valir. Now, in the show, the Horn of Valir was hidden in the Shinarian fortress of Faldara. But in the book, it was actually hidden and preserved in the Eye of the World. And think about the Horn of Valir, and the Horn of Valir is important because it is the centerpiece of Book 2. But aside from the Horn of Valir, just real quick, what it does is that when you blow the horn, it summons the spirit of ancient heroes.
Oh, cool.
So it'll summon the spirits of 100 heroes of legend, and they will fight for you.
Shit.
And and the horn is important because when Tamar Gaiden comes, they're supposed to use it to help to summon the dead heroes to fight with them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important. But the horn will become important in book 2. So put that aside. Next, they find a white banner, and on the banner is a figure of a strange animal.
Mm-hmm.
He describes it. Rand describes it as something like a serpent. It has like scales and 4 legs, and Moraine points out that is a dragon. This is the banner of Luz Theron Talamon, the original dragon. And wrapped inside the banner is one of the seals of the Dark One's prison.
And
and it's broken.
Oh, well, shit.
The seal. Now, the thing is that in the show, it's implied that very powerful channelers can break Quendalar objects.
Mm-hmm.
Quendalar is this magical substance, also called Hearthstone, and it's used. Its main purpose is to create artifacts called Angreal. Angreal are basically like arcane focuses. They're indestructible, and if a channeler uses one, it allows them to safely draw upon more energy from the true source. In fact, Moraine in the book carries an Angreal. It's a statuette of a woman, and she uses it to help boost her power. But like I said, Quendalar is unbreakable. In fact, when you channel energy when you channel the source through an Angreal, it makes it stronger, apparently. So everyone, including Moraine, are looking at this broken Quendalar seal, and they're just like, well, fuck.
Fuck us then, damn.
While everyone's wondering what does this mean, Moraine is like, it means that the Dark Ones well, yes, but it means that the Dark Ones the Dark One is the seals are weakening, and the Dark One will soon break free.
Uh-oh.
And the book comes to an end. They make their way back to Faldera, and they're given a hero's welcome, and because they succeeded in protecting the Eye of the World. And while they don't tell the people, aside from Lord Engelmar and his other lords who serve him, that the seal is broken. The first seal has broken, and we found the Horn of Valir. The Shineran Lord tells him that, all right, well, we're going to need to get you guys out of here, because for one thing, I can't look at that horn without wanting to call upon the spirits of the ancient heroes to help us and go charging into the Blight to take care of this once and for all.
Yeah.
Rand reveals to his friends that he can channel, and that once things are settled here, he plans on going off on his own, so that way he doesn't hurt them. Because right now, even though he can channel, he hasn't gone mad yet. He still has a lot of time. But the problem is, once you first touch the source and you start calling on it more and more, the more addicted to it you become.
Yeah.
So, thing is that when he's telling his friends this, he doesn't realize that Moraine, who's using a neat little trick of hers, using that blue stone she wears, she can listen in on conversations from afar. You can see it goes to her holding her stone, and she was listening to the whole conversation. And the book ends with her like. So it's fine. Hold on. Let me pull up the actual quote from the book.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the scene. This is a direct quote from the book.
Mm-hmm.
In Agelmar's private garden, under a thick bower dotted with white blossoms, Moraine shifted on her bed chair. The fragments of the seal lay on her lap, and the small gem she sometimes wore in her hair spun and glittered on its golden chain from the ends of her fingers. The faint blue glow faded from the stone, and a smile touched her lips. It had no power in itself, the stone, but the first use she had ever learned of the one power as a girl in the royal palace in Caerhine was using the stone to listen to people when they thought they were too far off to be overheard. The prophecies will be fulfilled, the Aes Sedai whispered. The dragon is reborn.
Oh dear.
So, in the like I said in the show, she tells them all straight up that she was looking for the dragon reborn.
Mm-hmm.
And towards the end, Rand comes to her and tells her he thinks it's him because he realizes he can channel. And that's why she takes him to the Dark One's prison, and that's when she gives him that little sangreal, and he uses it to vanquish the Dark One.
Yeah.
But in the books, she doesn't tell him shit. She doesn't tell him why she came to Eamon's Field in the first place. She doesn't tell him what she suspects that those three boys might be. She just says, the Dark Forces are interested in you, and I need to protect you. That's all she told him. That's all in her mind. That's all they needed to know.
It's fair.
But at the very end, she tells herself, the dragon is reborn, and the dragon reborn is Rand al'Thor.
Bum, bum, bum.
But dun. And that is where book one ends. If you listened to this is probably, it's been a while since we did a long episode like this.
This one is, from looking at my recording, 3 hours and 31 minutes.
I'm pretty sure you're going to cut that down, so it's still over 2 hours.
Oh, it's still gonna be quite a bit. Like I don't cut.
Yeah.
Like, I probably won't cut too much off. It should probably just be the beginning. But then once we begin, that's I maybe some of the spaces in between, and of course those little parts. For the most part, I think it'll probably stick to being 3 hours. So
yep. So, so this was book one of the Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
The Eye of the World.
Yeah.
Next week we are going to talk about book 2 in the series, which is called The Great Hunt.
Yeah.
And I promise you guys, this will. I promise, they will. In book 2, Rand does learn that he is the Dragon Reborn, or at least I believe he's the Dragon Reborn.
Yeah.
And they do. Moraine, as well as some other Aes Sedai who come to him, they explain to him why they think he is the one. And Moraine does have evidence, and much to Nynaeve's annoyance, Nynaeve also provides the evidence that Rand could be, because just little spoilers for next what to expect. In the prophecies of the dragon, it is said that the dragon will be reborn in the very place that he died. And in this case, it is on the steps of the Dragon Mountain, which is the volcano that was created when Lews Therin killed himself.
Oh no. Oh dear.
And, yep. And just so happens, 20 years ago, all these nations were embroiled in a long war called the Aiel War. The Aiel War was this brutal conflict between Caerhine, Tyr, Ilion, Andor, Tar-Valon, and a bunch of other nations. They were all they all had to band together to fight the Aiel, who are a desert people that come from a place they call the Aiel Waste. The reason why the Aiel went to war with all these nations was because the king of Caerhine, which is where Moraine is from, he cut down a tree and turned it into a throne.
Oh.
The significance of that tree is that tree was an offspring of the Avendisora, the Tree of Life. It was given to the kings of Carahine by the Aiel, who have a living descendant of the Tree of Life in their possession. And as a sign of friendship, they gave the kings of Carahine a sapling. So Carahine is set on the borders of the Aiel Waste. Like, the Aiel Waste is separated from all these other lands by a massive mountain range called the Spine of the World.
Yeah.
All right. And there's a gap in the spine where they can cross through, where the Aiel and the Carahinians can go through. And the Aiel, as a sign of friendship, gave the sapling to the Carahinians as a sign of friendship, and also letting them know that as part of our friendship, you are free to enter and cross through the Aiel Waste to reach this other land on the other side of the Aiel Waste called Shara. It's where all the silk trade that's where all the silk trade comes from. But one of the last king of Carahine, in his arrogance and ambition, he ordered the tree to be cut down and made into a throne. When the Aiel found out about this, they were pissed. They saw that as they saw this as a huge insult to themselves. And there's about I forgot how many Aiel clans there are, but I think there's about 10 or 11 of them. I gotta look it up later, but of those clans, 3 clans declared war on Carahine. And those 3 clans banded together and crossed the spine and attacked Carahine. See, the thing is that the Aiel's beef wasn't with the people of Carahine, it was with the king.
Yeah.
And their goal was to kill the king. Alright, that was their target. And the thing is, the king was like, oh shit, they're coming for me, so he ran. He fled to Tyr, to Ilion, to Andor, and a few other countries before finally fleeing to Tar Valon. And everywhere he fled, the Aiel followed him. There was about 20,000 Aiel that crossed the mountains and attacked. Those 20,000 Aiel was more than enough to obliterate the armies of the other nations. The other nations at first were fighting on their own, but when they realized that they weren't enough to stave off the Aiel, they banded together to try to fight back, and they still lost.
Damn.
Yeah, the Aiel are badass, and they ended up pushing back all the allied forces to Tar Valon. And the thing is, the Aiel, they have a huge level of respect for the Aes Sedai. So while they were sieging Tar Valon, they weren't actually attacking Tar Valon itself. They were attacking the armies that were outside of Tar Valon. And the thing is, because of how powerful the Aes Sedai are, they kept the Aiel from entering their city. So it was the only, to this day, Tar Valon has never fallen. And that is because of the White Tower's protection. Now, the King Damodred, the dumbass did flee to Tar Valon, but he was like, all right, last stand. He decided to meet the Aiel head on, and the battle ended up the final battle ended up being on at the steps of the Dragon Mounts. And the Aiel succeeded. They finally killed the king, and once they killed the king, they're like, all right, peace. They went back to the Aiel Waste.
Damn.
That's it. They're like, all right, we're done here. But during the battle, the thing about the Aiel is that the Aiel have they're not just an all-male warrior society. They're not a society where only the men fight. Women fight too, and the women are called Maidens of the Spear. And there was one particular maiden who was pregnant.
Yeah.
During the battle, And if you watch to the very end of the of season 1, there was a scene where there was an Aiel woman fighting a bunch of soldiers on a like snowy mountain,
That's his mother.
and she ends up giving birth. That was Rand's mother. Well, something like that happened in the books, but where in the show, Tam Thor found his mom, Rand's mother, and helped her give birth. In the book, he does find the mother and baby Rand, but the thing is, his mother gave birth to Rand and died as a result, and Tam Thor, he only found Rand after the fact. He while he was in the middle of the battlefield, he heard the cries of a baby, and he followed it, and he found poor baby Rand nearly frozen half to death, and his dead mother, who was an Aiel woman.
Yeah.
Maiden of the Spear. And thus the first part of the prophecies of the dragons was fulfilled. The dragon would be reborn in the place of his death.
Buffoonery.
Mm-hmm. And yes, that does mean that Rand is also an Aiel, but he was raised in the Two Rivers, so he's technically not an Aiel, but later on, this does his connections to the Aiel give him an edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
a lot
of good shit. I just wanted to tell you all about this because he will be told of this later on, and he learns more about his Aiel family, mainly his parents, who his parents were. But we don't learn that until book 4.
Damn.
Well, the details about his parents from the Aiel, he won't learn about until book 4. But the events of what happened of his birth on the Dragon Mount and how he was found, those are more. Though he is told more about that in book 2. But other than that, we have officially gone 30 minutes over. Jesus Christ! I know you wanted me to finish by 8, and it's already 8:30.
Nah, not big of a deal. So that is the first book of the Wheel of Time series, y'all. Yay! Go watch the Netflix series.
Thank you so much for listening.
Not Netflix series, Amazon series. Sorry, Amazon series.
You got me. I almost said it too. Yeah, definitely go watch the series. I mean, when I first watched the series, it got me so hooked that I was like, I gotta read I want to see, it's based off a book? Shit, let me check it out. Fuck, there's 14 books? I'm gonna read it.
And
I'm gonna read them all. And I have. Well, not all of them. I'm only halfway through.
Yeah.
Almost halfway through. I'm almost done with book 6.
Damn.
And yeah. Yeah. Though, so far, book 5 was my favorite. Especially because there was a certain scene where a certain evil lady / jealous ex girlfriend caused the scene and died.
I mean,
it was hilarious. If you know, you know. If you don't,
you will
tune
know.
In for book 5.
Yeah, you will know.
You will know. Oof. Anyway, thank you guys.
Thank you guys for listening. Catch us next time as we talk about book 2 of the Wheel of Time. Till then,
bye.
Bye.